Good evening and welcome to the August 5th, 2024 meeting of the Richmond Common Council. I call this meeting to order. We're going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a prayer by Councilor Taylor.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bow our heads for a moment of silence, please. Amen.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Doug Goss.
Here.
Lucinda Wright.
Present.
Bill Engel.
Here.
Larry Parker.
Here.
Ann Taylor.
Here.
Gary Turner.
Here.
Jane Bumbalough.
Here.
Justin Burkhart.
Here.
And Jerry Purcell.
Here.
All are present.
You've received minutes from our July 15th meeting. Any corrections, questions, concerns? Mr.
There are no
President.
corrections. I move that we accept as written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept our July 15th, 2024 minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have a resolution tonight to talk about under number 6, I believe.
Do you want me to read the title?
Yes.
Resolution number 7, 2024, resolution of the Richmond Common.
9, number 9.
Number 9. Why do I have 7 on here? Wrong paper. Number 9, authorizing the investment of public funds into certificates of deposit pursuant to Indiana Code 5-13-9-5.
Good evening, Council, Council President. My name is Tracy McGinnis. I am the City Controller.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Resolution 9-2024 is an annual housekeeping resolution related to the city's investment program. The resolution allows banks outside of the political subdivision to submit quotes on public fund certificates of deposit. This authorization expires 1 year after the date of adoption pursuant to Indiana Code 5-13-9-5. Also, Resolution 9-2024 also authorizes the city controller to invest in the certificates of deposit pursuant to IC or Indiana Code 5-13-9-5. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Tracy? As is our usual practice, we'll assign this to Finance for review, and we'll take action on it at our next meeting.
Thank you.
Communications from the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Couple of points of note. Animal welfare report public presentation was held July 18th, McGuire Hall by Dr. Sarah Pisano. You may recall that the city, the county, and Wayne County Foundation partnered for this very lengthy, in-depth study. And if you wanted the presentation analysis, you can see it on the Wayne County Foundation's website, and there's links to it on the city's social media website. So that's information now. We're working forward, city and the county, and still working together with the foundation on steps moving forward and have a better plan for animal welfare in the city and the county. 2025 budget planning, just an update. We had our first pass with department heads last month. Still waiting on some revenue estimates, still working through that. And we'll keep working up to council's committee of the whole meetings on August 20th and 21st, which are at 6 o'clock down in the community room, not here in council chambers. So if you don't have those on your calendar. And then also, it's still hot out there, so remember these cooling stations, locations, they're still available for people in need of a place to cool off during the heat of the day. That's all I have.
Questions for the mayor?
Mr. President,
Yes. So,
Mayor, I heard via social media that the city has purchased a building at 720 East Main Street. First of all, is that true?
Is that the former secret ingredient that
Yes.
passed from the city to R&R back to the city?
Yes.
And if it is, yes, and it'll go to the Community Economic and Revolving Loan Fund Board for proposals in a month or so. They'll take half a dozen proposals or more for future use for entrepreneurs to purchase that building over a period of time.
So it is still in the PLACE program?
Yes.
Okay. So we did not pay anything for it, or how was that purchase
We
made?
funded the money back that they invested in it, correct? Beth Fields would know more than I do.
that's correct.
If she wants to speak. We basically just, the money they put into it, we refunded back to them.
So this is a program that was developed in 2019 and was presented to the revolving loan fund. At that time, the revolving loan fund approved a purchase price and funding the purchase of 720, 724 East Main Street. Richmond Neighborhood Restoration purchased the building from the former owner, Jeannie Rush, directly. And then they applied to the Redevelopment Commission for funding to help with the rehabilitation of the building. That has been complete, and when that was completed, then the purchase of the building, the closure of that happened, so the transfer of that property to the city has occurred at this time. So now the revolving loan fund will determine what the acquisition price of that will be. They will determine what the lease amount will be for the apartments on the upper floors. And with the PLACE program, anyone interested in acquiring the property has to go through a training in order to apply to the revolving loan fund for that building. It is the first of several buildings. This is a program that has been funded by Earlham's Revitalize Richmond through their college and community funding through the Lilly Endowment. So there will be additional projects that R&R will complete, and then when those buildings are complete, they will donate those to the city for the PLACE program. And then they will all go through that same process where entrepreneurs that are interested in the building will attend the required training. They will then make pitches to the revolving loan fund board, and then the loan fund board will determine which entrepreneur will go into the space.
So this will happen for every building that we run through the PLACE program?
Correct. Yes, they will all follow that same process, yes.
Okay, I did not realize they would come back to the city's ownership. Thank you.
Yes, and then when for the 5 years that the building is in the PLACE program, the upper floors, the income from that comes back to the revolving loan fund and the redevelopment commission. And then when the entrepreneur finishes their 5 years of their adjusted lease payments and then actually acquires the building at the end of the full 5 years, then the income from those upper floors then will become that tenant's, and hopefully that will help them to have dedicated revenue that will help them to be able to sustain and continue the upkeep and maintenance of those properties because they will have dedicated revenue on the upper floors.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr.
Mayor?
President. Beth, Jerry, I think you're on the revolving loan fund board, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
Will we get a report on that? On
Yes.
what the sale price will be and who?
Actually, Mr. Purcell, you're not on revolving loan now. Counselor Taylor is.
Uh-huh. Good to know. Then, Ann, will you
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I will be happy to.
report? That'd be great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Other questions for the mayor?
Yes, I have a second question, and that is, Mayor, I was wondering how we're spreading out support for our small businesses in the community. In particular, it seems that all city events that I have been to recently have been catered by the same vendor. I believe in the past we have spread that around, and I wondered if there's any thoughts of spreading around our business to the small business owners in a more fair manner.
I don't know that they've been just shared with one. We try to shop local as much as possible. And there are 2 caterers downtown now we use a lot, and there's other caterers around too that we use. So I can't say that we have used one particular one more than any other. We definitely, and it's not something we typically put out for bid though, because it's under that bid amount, so it's who's available. Most of the time it's who's available and do they have what we need for the event? Do they have capacity for the event? Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Mr. President. Mr. Mayor, recently we were in a meeting where there was discussion about, in the month of July, the Richmond Fire Department had discovered that their electronic files were gone with exception of personnel. And maybe this is a public safety committee discussion, but has anything been done about that?
As far as I understand, those were administrative files and personal notes that probably didn't have to be transferred to new administration. So I don't know that there's any administrative files that have gone missing other than just personal notes and personal ideas and plans, which are private property. So I'm not aware of any others, but I'm sure the city attorney will look into it and make sure if anything's missing, we'll find it.
Any further questions? Hearing none, we will move forward. You've received minutes from the July 11th and July 18th and an executive session of the Board of Public Works. Any questions about those? Hearing none, we'll move on. We do have one thing under miscellaneous business tonight. We have 2 positions to fill on the Historic Preservation Commission. The mayor has proposed 2 appointments, but as is our usual case, I'm going to postpone action on this tonight. Anyone other than these candidates that they'd like to offer for consideration, bring them to the next meeting. So we're on to ordinances on first reading.
Mr. President,
Mr. Parker.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules and read ordinance 43, 2024, 44, 45, 46, and 47 by title only.
Second.
We have a motion, second, to read ordinances 44, 45, 46, 47, and
43.
43. Dyslexia matters.
It's all right.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ordinance number 43, 2024, an appropriation ordinance authorizing the submittal, acceptance, and appropriation of a grant from the Indiana Economic Development Corporation.
Good evening, Beth Fields, Director of Strategic Initiatives. As you may recall, the city, the county, and the Economic Development Corporation partnered on Make My Move, which was a recruitment program for remote workers. And that program has been moving along, not as quickly as we had hoped, but there is an opportunity to continue that program and to acquire additional funding from the Indiana Economic Development Corporation to continue funding that program. So Ordinance 43, 2024 provides permission for the City of Richmond to apply to the Indiana Economic Development Corporation for $60,000 to fund that program. The other portion that's a part of this memo is Contract 144, 2024, and that is an interlocal agreement between the City of Richmond and Wayne County government. When looking at the budget and the funding that the city had available, there was not sufficient funding to continue this contract on the city side. So the county and the Economic Development Corporation have generously stepped up and agreed to fund this entire contract. So that interlocal agreement specifies how that will work. And then Valerie Schaefer, president of the Wayne County Economic Development Corporation, is here to give you a little more information about Make My Move and the progress that we've had to date.
Thank you, Beth. Good evening, everyone. Valerie Schaefer here.
Good evening.
As Beth mentioned, we launched the program back in 2022, April of 2022 exactly. And when we launched the program, we started through the process of developing our incentive package for remote workers, as well as our webpage and all of the marketing collateral with Make My Move, who manages all of that on our behalf. Beth and I were in charge of really helping to cultivate a lot of that information and work with partners from around the community to make sure we were putting together a really appealing marketing campaign to attract remote workers to want to move to Wayne County. As a result of that, as of today, we've had 15 remote workers and their families move here, and all of those families except for one have moved to the city of Richmond. 6 of those families have now lived here for 1 year and have either stayed here after purchasing a home or have renewed leases to stay for at least another year. And there's another 5 remote workers who have accepted our offer to move here and are still working on their plans, trying to secure housing and make other arrangements. And there's currently 3 offers that we've extended that are pending that we're waiting to hear back from the families. Families have moved here from California, Nevada, Colorado, Michigan, Florida, Ohio, Illinois, Tennessee, Texas, Idaho, Pennsylvania, and even France.
Wow.
7 of the 15 families have purchased homes with the balance renting, and the average salary for remote workers is $108,880. To qualify for the program, someone has to have a minimum salary of $55,000 a year, but we've seen an individual move here with a salary as high as $240,000 per year. So while it did take us a while to gain some momentum and get the program up and running, we have kind of hit our stride with individuals applying for and making their moves to Wayne County. And so for that reason, we would like to extend our contract with Make My Move. And as Beth mentioned, the county and the EDC through the Consolidated Edit Fund are funding that contract with the hopes that the city will apply for another $60,000 grant from the IEDC to reimburse us for about 2/3 of the expenses.
Thank you. This is going to be assigned to finance for review, but if the council has any questions right now that they'd like to have answered, go ahead, but we'll be having it heard at our next meeting. Hearing no questions, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie.
Ordinance number 44, 2024, a special ordinance authorizing the approval of a statement of benefits for a property owner applying for deductions under Indiana Code 6-1.1-2.1.
And I am going to also, at the same time, simultaneously address 45, 2024. These are tax abatements for Transcendia. They are doing an expansion project here within the community. They have an application before us for a tax abatement for their personal property in the amount of $10,500,000. They also have a real property application in the amount of $3 million. This will retain 122 jobs here in the community, as well as create 30 new jobs.
This will be assigned to Tax Abatement Committee for review, so we'll pick it up for a hearing at our next meeting, probably.
Ordinance number 46, 2024, a special ordinance authorizing the approval of a statement of benefits for a property owner applying for deductions under Indiana Code 6-1.1 through 12.1.
This tax abatement application is from Eastern Indiana Flex, and they are the company that is leasing space, part of the new space for Transcendia for their expansion. They are eligible under code to apply for an abatement based on the tenant's information. So as you'll see, the jobs and the jobs created are the same. This is a $3.5 million project. You will also see attached to this, there is Resolution 8, 2024, which will be on public hearing at our meeting on August 19th. Because Eastern Indiana Flex applied for this tax abatement after the beginning of the project, it started in March of this year, the council has to determine whether or not to allow that to move forward through a public hearing, which would be a waiver of noncompliance, indicating that we are going to accept and potentially move that forward. So that will be on the agenda for the 19th. That is being advertised publicly, and it will be in the paper.
Thank you. This also goes to Tax Abatement Committee for review. So we'll take it up later.
Ordinance number 47, 2024, an appropriation ordinance amending the 2024 budget. Finance Committee?
Oh, yes,
It's my office, so yeah. It's just for file cabinets.
I understand. I'm going to send it to Finance for
Okay.
review, though. Thank you.
We'll see how that goes.
Thanks. It's a biggie.
I thought you'd enjoy it.
Ordinances on second reading. Ordinance number 39, 2024, an appropriation ordinance amending the 2024 budget.
We thought was going to be last, but we're doing it now?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
No.
No,
It is to be last. 41 should be our first ordinance on second
I
reading.
think I gave away all the new agendas.
Okay, so number one is
Okay,
41.
41.
Do you need one?
No, I can
39,
just do
we'll
it
go now.
backwards.
We can go now.
Yeah,
All right.
It's up to you.
I think we should.
I was thinking in the interest of the people who are here to speak to the issues that are before us tonight. So we're going to stick with 41 going first.
Okay. Ordinance number 41, 2024, a special ordinance amending the zoning map for a certain parcel from institution district to general commercial district.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Justin Purvis, Planning Director. Ordinance 41 is a zoning map amendment for the property address 6400 National Road East. This is the former New Creations building. The location is currently zoned institutional, and the petitioner would like to rezone that to general commercial so that they can develop the property commercially over time. Common Council previously referred this to Richmond's Advisory Plan Commission for public hearing. Notices of the July 24th hearing were sent to 8 adjacent property owners. We received no responses, and no one from the public spoke in favor of or opposition to the ordinance during the Plan Commission meeting. Planning staff recommended approval of the ordinance, and Plan Commission voted 7-0 to recommend approval to Common Council. The Richmond Rising Comprehensive Plan identifies the corridor adjacent to the I-70 US 40 interchange as an important gateway into the city and state, and encourages development along this corridor that is designed to, quote, conveniently serve both local residents and regional visitors, and allow for a great deal of flexibility with regards to intensity and scale of development, supporting both smaller local businesses and regional destinations and attractions. Given the large amount of nearby commercial uses, combined with the high visibility of the subject property, for both local and non-local traffic, planning staff recommends approval of the ordinance, believing that commercial development is a suitable use of this property. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to address those at this time.
Any questions for Dustin? Hearing none, I'll put this on public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for this ordinance, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. President and Board. My name's Louis Keene. I am the mayor of Uranus, and we're bringing the Uranus Fudge Factory to Richmond. So I want to thank you guys for letting us open Uranus in Richmond. The mayor's been great. I've been appreciative of all the stuff he's been helping me with. But what I want to get out here real quick, but I do want to thank Dustin and his team. We put them through a lot of hurdles, and they really helped us get through it. This is the first time I've actually built in a city and had all these things I have to deal with. So I really appreciate it, and I just want to say thank you for all your team's help. And I want to thank you guys. We're going to bring a lot of jobs and a lot of laughter here to town. So
That's good.
I have.
Need it.
We need the laughter.
Yes. People will laugh at Uranus, I promise. So I'm open to questions if you want to know more about Uranus.
Questions? From council?
Not a chance.
Hearing none, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone wishing to speak against this ordinance, please come forward.
Move for engrossment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to engross.
You did.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Call the question.
Second.
Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Doug Goss,
Aye.
Lucinda Wright,
Aye.
Bill Engel,
Aye.
Larry Parker.
Aye.
Ann Taylor.
Aye.
Jane Bumbleow.
Aye.
Justin Burkhart.
Aye.
Jerry Purcell.
Aye.
And Gary Turner.
Aye.
All are in favor.
Yay.
Thank you.
40.
Now, just a minute, I'm going backwards.
40.
Number 40, a special ordinance amending the zoning map for certain parcels from medium-density, single-family residential districts to planned development districts to mixed-base residential zoning designations.
We're going to have 3 reports in advance of opening the hearing, and we'll start with the developer to make his presentation, followed by Dustin to make the Plan Commission report, and we've arranged for representation of the Water and Sanitary Board to be here tonight to speak to the issues that we've discussed in that field previously. Take it away.
Good evening, members of the council. My name is Brian Stump with 11th Street Development.
Good evening.
9511 Angola Court, Suite 230, Indianapolis, Indiana. Before we go to the next slide, before we get into the sort of the details of the project, I want to provide a brief kind of big picture view of what we're doing. This tonight is, we're here to talk about zoning. This is the first step of many approvals that this project requires. So at the zoning phase, we're looking at, is the proposed use appropriate for the site? Are there basic utilities able to serve the site? With approval tonight, we'll then move on to the next phase, which is number 2, which is the primary plat. And it's at that stage that we look at the actual entire neighborhood gets laid out in CAD, following all the city standards. While I have great confidence in my drawing, my hand sketch of this land plan, I'm sure we'll get it tweaked a bit once we get it into CAD. And so it's at this stage also that we do the traffic studies and identify what improvements are necessary, other turn lanes, other things that we need to do for traffic on the site, as well as looking at the stormwater and drainage studies and making sure that the ponds are sized appropriately and that they're in the proper locations. After that, we'll move on to the step 3, which is the construction drawings. This will be done by each individual section of the neighborhood. These are the detailed drawings of how the contractors are going to build the site. And then moving forward with the site development and home construction, that will happen by section. We anticipate our desires to break ground next year, and we view that this will go through with the final phase being developed in 2030. So that's sort of the overall timeline of the project. But tonight, we're here talking about zoning, and the good news is state law gives us some criteria of how do we make this decision on whether the use is appropriate for the site. And these are the 5 criteria that are in state law: the comprehensive plan, the current conditions and character in the districts, and so forth. Your Dustin's staff report provides findings for all of these. We fulfill the requirements of these, and we should be approved because we have fulfilled the requirements at this stage. When we start the design of a community, my background is in planning as well as development. I always start with a comprehensive plan, and that's where, in looking at what does the city say that it's looking for in its land uses. So we start with a comprehensive plan. You'll see with this mixed residential community, part of the reason, and a good chunk of the reason we went with a mixed residential design is because the comprehensive plan is clear of the need for infrastructure and for a variety of housing types in the community. Also, we fit very well with the goals that are in the Forge Your Path. This is the East Central Indiana Regional Council's plan. This is for the report that's prepared for the Ready Grant funding, and talks about building thriving neighborhoods that appeal to current and future residents, infrastructure improvements, and providing a range of housing options. You've heard it mentioned before in other meetings about the Tracy Cross housing study. This was just done, it was completed at the end of last year. Very important study. Tracy Cross, as a private developer, I've used them to understand what the housing market is. So I was glad to see that you picked such a reputable firm to do this. The city is looking at the need of 450 homes per year. That's rental and for sale. I've circled on here the for sale units. We're looking at about 165 units a year. So when you look at Smith Hill, our proposal tonight, it'll be 17% of the housing demand for sale housing by 2033. So we're part of the solution. This is by far not the only solution. You should be pursuing other housing options throughout the city. That needs to be done to meet the demand for housing. But the demand for housing here is strong and available. And to that, I'm going to turn over to Chris Ham with HWC Engineering to provide a little more detail on the housing.
Thank you, Brian. Mr. President, council members, thank you for having me here this evening and being able to speak on behalf of this project. My name is Chris Ham, Vice President with HWC Engineering with offices at 135 North Pennsylvania Street, Suite 2800 in Indianapolis, Indiana. Brian had already told you about the local housing study that's been done for this project, and there's no doubt that there is demand for housing in this community. I want to step back a little bit to look at a little bit higher view of the context of this within the region and within the state. Obviously, I'm very excited to be here to continue this collaboration with Brian, and this is a significant project for the city of Richmond, for Wayne County, for the region, and for the state of Indiana for many reasons. The first of which is when the Regional Cities Program was created before COVID, the precursor to Ready and Ready 2.0, one of the driving factors of the Regional Cities Program was that there's a belief, and I think that's been founded, that the single biggest threat to economic development in the state of Indiana is population stagnation. Mayor, if you'll flip to the next slide. As you look at this slide, there was data to support this finding when the Regional Cities program was put together. The Indiana Business Research Center in 2018 did a projection study that identified that between 2015 and 2050, there was anticipated to be 660,000 additional people moving into the state of Indiana. And including that, over 500,000 of those residents would be moving into the metro Indy area, so Indianapolis and the surrounding suburbs. So the vast majority of that growth was projected to happen in central Indiana. If you'll look at the map up there, you'll see that of the 92 counties in the state of Indiana, 59 counties were projected to lose population during that period, Wayne County being one of those in that study. What we know empirically is that through programs like READY and regional cities, counties and communities across the state of Indiana are using those funds to confound those expectations. In places like Rush County, in places like Howard County, in places like Jennings County, they are actively promoting residential development to turn that tide and make sure that they're not defined by that projection, but yet they define that projection moving forward. And the reason for this is that sustainability is a function of several factors within communities, one of which, and really the primary factor, is driving growth in the community. And that can be commercial growth, that can be industrial growth, but generally speaking, it starts with residential growth. When you talk to site selectors around the country who do site selection decisions for industrial and commercial users all over the country, they will tell you that the two primary factors in making decisions about where a company locates is the availability of skilled workforce and the cost of that workforce. There are other factors that go into those decisions, but if they can't find workers for their jobs, they can't be successful there. They can't expand in those communities, and they want and need that workforce to be successful. Housing is one component of driving quality of life in communities to be able to provide opportunities for people to move here. That then drives community development and drives economic development as it moves forward. But as with anything, development is driven by a risk-reward connection. It used to be, prior to 2008, that site selection decisions were made based off where communities had the greatest opportunity to succeed. In 2008, the world turned upside down, and bankers lost their jobs because they made bad loans on risky businesses that failed in those processes. And it became much more so that developers were looking for places where they had the least opportunity to fail, more so than the greatest opportunity to succeed. So finding ways to balance that risk is essential. If the markets alone would drive growth and development in the more rural and outskirt parts of the state of Indiana, it would do so. You'd have a thriving housing market here, and you have a demand for it, but it's more than just having the demand for it. There needs to be a proof of concept of it, and that's why communities around the state have been using programs like READY to remove risk and get developers to come into their communities, either local developers, regional developers, or in some cases national developers, to begin building the infrastructure to support new, modern, diverse housing product in their communities, which is so critically essential to the long-term sustainability of communities. Mayor? So how are they doing this? They're being proactive in preparing for development. They're securing sites and offering them up to developers. They're putting infrastructure in place to be able to support these kinds of developments. They're incentivizing projects through TIF and housing TIF and a variety of other sources to be able to help reduce that risk. And they're encouraging creative partnerships within the community between institutional users like the city, the hospital, and others, just like on this program, this project, to really be able to not just reduce the risk, but bring in these institutional partners that can help make this project successful. And then finding those private sector partners that can help you move forward. There are builders that will build in communities. It's harder to find people to build lots. Lots are a whole different animal from actually building homes. Lots of people will build homes, but putting in horizontal infrastructure to create lots for that building is a different animal altogether, and there are fewer of those that are interested, willing, or have the expertise to do that. In fact, there's a significant lack of overall lots for construction in the state of Indiana today as a result of lagging issues related to 2008. It's just now we're beginning to catch up on that to be able to support the kind of overall housing growth in the state that exists. So why is all of this important from a macro perspective? It's important because housing impacts the sustainability and local economic development of communities. It allows you to retain population. You heard the Make My Move conversation tonight, which is great, tremendous success for this. But people that move into the community need the amenities that everybody looks for: great schools, safe communities, parks and trails, and yes, the housing products that they want to live in as they move forward. It helps attract population, just like the Make My Move program is doing. It helps provide local economic support to your school corporations, to your local businesses, to your overall tax base within the community. It helps enhance overall quality of place by providing, again, that infrastructure that can allow people to find those places that they want to live in. And by the way, you've got thousands of people commuting into this county and the region every day, many of them from Ohio, that I'm sure would prefer to live closer to where they work if they had the housing that they were looking for in that proposal, or in that area. And then, as I've stated before, residential development is the first wave catalyst. Population growth begets commercial growth, begets primary job employment growth within your community. This helps not only the businesses that aren't here, but it also helps the businesses that are here, that want to expand and be successful in the community. They're all looking for workforce, and growing the community's population and the county's population is a critical component of being able to provide that long-term sustainability and economic development. And that's why I'm excited about this project, because that's what this project does. It is a true public-private partnership specifically focused on addressing a need and an issue inside the community, inside the county, and inside of the region, which is why I think it would make an excellent project to move forward and be wildly successful as it does move forward. And we're just excited to be part of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I've had the pleasure of working with Chris for probably more years than I'll care to mention. And one of the things that's happened recently, just want you to be aware of, is that I've actually joined HWC. I'm very excited about this. This is a situation where we've worked on this project for over 2 years together. We've also worked on other projects for many, many years. And I'm excited because together we'll be able to help communities like Richmond with their housing needs across the state. But what does this mean to Smith Hill specifically? Really not much outside of we now have a deeper bench and more resources, which is a great thing. I'm still here, still be involved in the project all the way through the turning over the homeowners association at the end of the process. So now we'll get into some of the details of the project itself. So our site is the 80 acres at South 37th Street, just south of Bachmeyer Road. A couple things about this. Number one, changes that since last time you saw us, there are no apartments. They have been removed from the site. Number two, there is no daycare use. This is a pure residential development. And third, we've removed over 100 homes from our previous proposal. So the updated plan you see on the screen ahead of you, much of the site looks as you saw before, with a single-family home. We have 5 different collections of homes. The entire project is for sale residential. There are no commercial uses whatsoever in the project. And we have 5 different home collections across the site. And the goal, again, is much like the comprehensive plan, hitting those different price points and those different lifestyle options. What has changed, you'll see the biggest visual change here at this scale, is the shift to the townhome buildings that you see in the northwest portion of the site. What we have in what we're proposing here is a max of 110 townhomes on that portion of the site as it transitions from the multifamily zoning that's across the street on Bachmeyer down to the single-family homes in the remainder of the site. So just as a quick refresher, some examples of the homes that we envision in the community. So the Brookside homes would be sort of your starter homes, and these would be 1- and 2-story family homes. Next is the Sunrise Collection. This is sort of your move-up buyer, trying to sort of your traditional family home in the community. Then we have custom homes. These are in the northeast portion of the site. And these will be true custom homes. They're built, individually designed and built on the lots. And then our fourth collection of homes, this is in the middle of the site. In the center of the site, we have a flex area that's looking at the courtyard villas or cottages. These are maintenance-free living, so homes people will purchase, but they'll essentially have a maintenance package as part of the community maintenance. So with the courtyard homes, if you recall, we have individual single-family homes that are on a shared driveway. Or we're looking at cottages happening in this site. The cottages are small homes that are just cute little cottages that are located on a common green. Go to the next slide. Here's kind of an aerial of how those lay out. So we've got the common area in the center, and the homes face that common area, and then the parking is off to the side. And so that's why you see some of the requests that are in the PUD specific to parking. It's dealing with the garages and to allow this configuration here for the cottages. And then finally, up in the northwest portion of the site, we have the townhomes. These are for sale homes. We're looking at 2- and 3-story townhomes, and we'll probably have, I was showing on the land plan, 4-unit buildings. We may have a few 3-unit or 5-unit buildings, but for the most part, there'll be 4-unit buildings. That's just my experience in building townhomes. That's just from a massing side and scale, that's what is desirable. Next one. So in the PUD, which regulates the PD, which regulates the use of the property, we've sort of simplified the districts. So District A is our conventional single-family homes. Those are the 3 different main collections. The reason I'm showing this is the important part to show is that District B is the courtyard or the cottages. Those are intentionally in the center of the site, so they can't creep out to the edge or be up against any of the existing residential that surrounds the site. And then finally, District C, where the townhomes are, that's up in the northwest portion of the site. Phasing, again, we're looking at 6-7 years of development here. We're going to start at phase 1 on South 37th Street. South 37th Street's frankly an amazing street from a development standpoint. That street was created for the future development of the area, and that's why we want to use that as our front door. So phase 1 allows us to have some townhomes and some of the couple collections of the single-family homes, and we'll move through the site from west to east, and then you'll see we'll bring on the custom homes and the townhomes as we get the utilities to that portion of the site. Some concerns we've heard through the process, and we touched upon these briefly at the Planning Commission meeting. One is the drainage and flooding. Big concern about that. The neighborhood has a stormwater system. That is part of the requirements that the city and county have for the site. So we must capture the water that lands on the site and slowly release it. Gordon Moore is here. He can talk to the specifics of what is required through the drainage ordinances, but suffice to say that we are required to have less water leave the site after heavy rains than currently happens right now. We have to capture that. That's why we have the ponds, and that's why it slowly is released to the site. We've heard some questions about the concerns for safety of the retention ponds. The retention ponds are designed with safety features in them. We've got safety ledges around the perimeter inside the pond, so should someone fall in or cargo in, it gets caught on that safety ledge. There are also things where we have, where a pond is close to a road, there's a variety of different ways that is addressed, either through physical barriers or sometimes we use retaining walls and landscaping or heightened curbs. That's really site-specific, and that's one of those things that will be addressed at the primary plat level. We're looking at how that, the specific safety mechanism that may be required. We have heard some concerns about wells. Our stormwater system affects surface water and how it runs off. The wells are from aquifers below the ground, so we don't see there won't be any issue with those going dry or not operating as they should. Also, we've heard concerns about, well, you're putting infrastructure into the site. Does this mean I'm going to have to connect to city water and sewer? You go ahead and go to the next one. Because of how we're building from west to east, all of the infrastructure is pretty much internal to the site. So folks that are on Garwood and things, we're not running any infrastructure out there. There's not a requirement to tie in because there isn't anything for them to tie into. And then the final concern was water pressure. Indiana American Water identifies that there are no water concerns in the area. To the extent that there are, our project, right now we've got water mains up on Bachmeyer and then down to the north end of Sandbridge. This development will run a water main along South 37th Street, looping that system. So to the extent that there may be water pressure issues today, all of a sudden we have a loop system, you've got water feeding in from both sides to where that service is happening, and it balances out the water pressure. So with that, I'm available for any questions that you may have.
I'll start with one question. It was asked at the Plan Commission, you were asked in comparison to an R2 development, how many more housing units will this create?
Yeah, so this land plan is showing 288 homes on it. If straight R2 would yield about 255 lots. So we're about 10 or 15% higher than what a standard R2 would be.
250, 288, 38?
Yeah.
Right? Thank you.
How many of
Other
these
questions?
homes are R2?
How many are R2? Frankly, most of what you see in the light yellow, light green, are all pretty much at R2 standards. Where we're getting some flexibilities here is on the width of the lots, in some of the lot size. So you see in the darker yellow. But density-wise, our single family is really coming in pretty much at where the density of an R2 district would be. That uptick that Mr. Turner was noting is really coming from that transition from the multifamily, that transition created by the townhomes in that multifamily area.
So are you saying that all the yellow fits the definition of R2?
No, because we have the cottages in there. We have
So
we're doing a
caveat
modification.
was sorta or almost.
Yeah, it depends on the home collection.
Gotcha.
Because the R2, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dustin, but I want to say it's a minimum 80-foot wide lot with 12,000 square feet. And so some of those lots are 75, and then the darker yellow are 60-foot lots, which is actually the standard lot size today in communities.
Other questions?
Mr. President,
Mr. Parker?
could you give us an idea as to what these houses and townhouses will sell for, plus the HOA fee?
HOA fee, we do not know at this point because we need to know how many homes are in the neighborhood to do that. But let me touch upon that.
Many.
What?
If it's filled up, then you'll know.
Well, it depends because there are different rates so the maintenance-free living folks will pay a different assessment than a standard home. So those are the elements that get determined later on in the process, usually at the primary plat or after that. So I'm sorry, what was the first part of your question?
How much are they going to cost?
Yeah, so we are going to, the single-family homes, we're looking at the townhomes probably being 225 to 275.
That's the townhomes?
The townhomes. I would say the cottages and villages, probably 250 to 3. The 60-foot lots would be 275 to 325, and then the sunrise homes 325 to 350, and then the custom will be, those are custom, so they could be anywhere from 500 and up.
Brian, are you aware of the surrounding property that went pending today? Do you have any affiliation with that property or aware of that?
I'm not aware of that.
Let me remind council members, you need to ask the president to speak. That's the procedure. Any other questions?
Mr.
Mr.
President.
Parker?
You have listed on here eight different retention ponds. And I think someone in the audience will probably ask some of these questions, but of these retention ponds, are any of them going to be fenced?
No, our intention is not to fence them. My experience has been it's actually the emergency responders do not like them fenced. There are ways that you make the pond safe through the design of the safety ledges and things of that nature, or methods that you use to, if a pond happens to be near a road, that you keep cars out of the ponds. But when it comes to an emergency situation where something does happen, my experience with first responders is they don't want a fence in the way as they're trying to get to the pond.
Have you had problems with the safety ledge? Because that's an attractive nuisance for kids, I know, because they can wade up to 2 or 3 feet before all of a sudden it just drops over their head.
I've not had a problem with that.
Okay, so that's really been the answer to you then, huh?
Yeah, I've not had any issues with ponds.
All right, sir.
Any other questions?
Mr. President, can I speak?
You may.
So let me read you this quote here. The first priority for the city of Richmond is to make sure the development exceeds the quality that would have resulted from a traditional application of the zoning ordinance. Would you say that you're putting this is a priority as far as the quality of the construction that's going into this?
Absolutely, which is why we included those images in our plan development, to set that bar for the quality. What's shown in those images is higher than the base requirements of the city.
Other questions? Hearing none, we will move on to the report from the plan director.
Hello again, Council. Ordinance 40 is a district ordinance and establishment plan for a mixed residential plan development project that consists of 5 housing types, totaling approximately 178 new single-family homes and up to 110 new townhome units. The district ordinance requests that the development's current base zoning district of medium-density single-family residential, or R2, be modified to allow some sections of urban residential underlying zoning to exist alongside the R2 base district within the development. This means that if approved, the R2 and the urban residential zoning district's development standards will apply within their assigned sub-districts, with some exceptions which are indicated in sections 5 through 8 of the district ordinance draft that is included in your packet. Ordinance 40 was previously referred to the Advisory Plan Commission for public hearing. Notices of public hearing were sent to 149 nearby property owners. Planning staff received feedback from 44 of the 149 properties that we contacted, as well as an additional 52 responses on copies of IND's letters from residents located outside of that interested party radius. So this totaled 96 responses in all, and all but 2 of those were opposed. During the July 24th public hearing, 8 members of the public spoke in opposition to the ordinance, echoing the letter's references to traffic, drainage, density, and the devaluation of existing homes, among other concerns. 10 members of the public spoke in favor of the ordinance, citing the significant need for increased housing options in Richmond. Planning staff recommended approval of the ordinance, and Planning Commission voted 6-1 to recommend approval of the ordinance to Richmond's Common Council, with no recommended amendments or revisions to the current plan. As a reminder, and Brian alluded to this as well, the plan development process is split into 3 different phases, and we are currently on phase 1 of this process. And this phase parallels the rezone process, so similar to Ordinance 41 that we heard just before this. The concerns we have previously heard from nearby property owners, and which we can expect to hear again this evening, including concerns about increased vehicular traffic and safety, stormwater runoff and drainage, and utility capacity, all represent vitally important aspects of the plan development process, and construction on the project cannot begin until a thorough evaluation and approval of these components has been completed. However, these considerations are addressed during the primary plat process, and by state and local code, we are unable to begin the primary plat process until the subject property has been rezoned to a plan development. That is to say, approval of Ordinance 40 this evening does not suggest that the petitioner has satisfied the city's requirements related to traffic, stormwater, or utilities. Rather, approving of the zoning map amendment unlocks the next phase of the process, which requires, among many other things, that the developer provide civil engineering drawings to be reviewed by licensed engineers, have to provide a traffic impact study to be reviewed by city engineering and RPD's traffic division, and a utility plan to be reviewed by city departments and utility companies. And then once we have those, we will hold another public hearing with the Plan Commission to discuss these issues specifically. Local and Indiana codes also state that the Plan Commission, planning staff, and Common Council must evaluate a zoning map amendment with regard to its compatibility with the city's comprehensive plan. And the city's comprehensive plan provides this guidance, which is pretty clear on a project like this. As I wrote in my staff report to the Plan Commission, the plan's future land use map, and this is on page 57 of our comprehensive plan, identifies the site of the proposed plan development as part of its traditional neighborhood place type moving forward. The plan clarifies that appropriate land use attributes within this place type include, quote, single-family detached units as the main type of housing, while single-family attached units, such as townhomes, can be strategically integrated with the single-family detached units. Additionally, the development supports several of the plan's objectives and policy goals related to growing the city's built environment, including improving the city's collective ability to deliver attractive sites for development and redevelopment, while promoting residential infill within current boundaries rather than developing along outer edges, which would be a strain on community resources. Further, the location of the proposed planned development supports the plan's call to, quote, allow for developments that are compact with convenient access to jobs, services, and amenities. Finally, the development supports the plan's housing-specific objectives and policy goals, most notably its calls to use strategic and planned development to guide growth, to diversify the city's housing stock to better serve the needs of residents of all ages and abilities, and to encourage residential development in contiguous neighborhoods. Planning staff recommends approval of Ordinance 40 because in addition to the proposal's compatibility with the city's comprehensive plan, the proposed development addresses one of the city's greatest current needs by creating infill residential growth within an already established residential region of the city with existing city service and public utility capacity within 1 mile of East National Road, all of which constitutes responsible development and growth. If you have any questions for me at this time, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Any questions for Dustin?
Mr. President,
Mr. Parker?
did you say that there was 94 letters returned in opposition and 2 for it?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Dustin. Now we'll hear from Elijah Welsh and Gordon Moore regarding stormwater management.
Elijah Welch, Richmond Sanitary District.
Gordon Moore, Wayne County Surveyor. We'll kind of tag team this because we both are involved heavily with the drainage process and, of course, submittals of all plans and reviews. I'm here representing the Wayne County Drainage Board, which consists of the Wayne County Commissioners. They have been aware of this project for some time. They are in agreement that the 2 ditches that are involved here, Scott Ditch consumes, or the watershed includes approximately 90% of the property. The Quig Ditch, there's a small area down on the southeast corner that will drain to the Quig Ditch, but with the retention basin that is shown there, I doubt if any water will go to the Quig. So the Scott Ditch is the primary concern. As was stated previously, the criteria for drainage is that they have less runoff following the project as they did prior to the project. You have the tools in your ordinances to make sure that happens. It'll have to go through a process by what I consider one of the finest engineers standing to my right that I've ever worked with, along with his assistant, Gerald South. Also, it'll have to come to the Wayne County Drainage Board, where we will also go through the review process. It'll have to pass by both jurisdictions. Scott Ditch has a large watershed that goes up and contains some of the shopping malls, and it contains Winfield Edition, quite a few, the Hunters Point. We just don't see, with your ordinances through the UDO and through the ordinance that you just passed 2 weeks ago, which is 56 pages of the most detailed drainage plans that I've ever seen. I've worked in 7 jurisdictions, including Indianapolis, Dayton, Cincinnati. I've never seen anything that covers all the details that are included in this particular ordinance. If we require the developers to comply with all these ordinances, submit the right plans, do the as-built drawings, and then the final line in both of these ordinances that you have enforcement, and you can make their lives really miserable if they don't comply. So I'll turn it over to Elijah, unless you have questions at this point.
Questions for Gordon?
Mr. President.
Mr. Parker?
It's not a question, and yet we have problems with flooding in Bachmeyer Trace.
That is a whole different issue. Bachmeyer Trace was designed, and maybe Elijah should address this, but Bachmeyer Trace was designed just for one particular section. Past administrations that allowed that to grow and a lot more water go into it. And you're right, there is flooding in that particular area, but there are plans, as you're aware of, that's going to be under control in the future. And this project cannot drain into Bachmeyer Trace subdivision, cannot cross the road whatsoever. All the natural terrain is going to bring it to the south and to the west. And Scott Ditch lies on the south side of South 37th Street. So, yes, I agree. I think everybody's aware that there are flooding problems in that particular area. But this project is not going to add to those at all.
May not add to them, but we can't take care of the one we got.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
Elijah and Gordon, just a question. If studies have been done and awareness has been there, why now? Why address the ditches now instead of years ago when maybe we were aware of the ditches? Why take this project to address it?
So the Bachmeyer Trace project that Larry's referring to is really one that we just started working on in the past couple of years. So it's not one that's been hanging out for a real long time. And it is completely separate. I mean, they all drain to the ditch, but the pond in Bachmeyer Trace is just way undersized. I think it was built for the particular section of that subdivision. But the thing that I don't think it accounted for was all the drainage area coming into it. So we've looked at increasing the size of the pond, but really that is a completely separate thing. And whether we were to drain that directly to the ditch without detention, or no matter what happens with the detention downstream, those solutions aren't connected to each other.
Yeah.
Might I also add that the Scott Ditch is a county assessment ditch, of course, controlled by the Drainage Board within their easement. Approximately 3 years ago, we put that ditch back on the assessment rolls. I believe it was like 1989 was the last time that they had been collecting. And the reason for that is because we were having increased debris and some blockages in the ditch itself. And we have spent thousands of dollars cutting down trees, removing that debris, making sure that we have positive flow from the north to the south. So that happened long before this project ever came on the radar.
Yeah, and it was coming from a place where the residents of the surrounding area, share concern because, they have expressed to me that they've expressed concern, whether it was city or county in the past, with issues, and it took a project to address it, basically.
I would somewhat disagree with that from the county standpoint. We've been addressing it. I've been here 8 years now. Scott Ditch has gotten more attention than all the rest of the ditches throughout the county. And primarily because it's the heaviest residential commercial area. Most of our ditches are farm ditches. A lot of them are tiles. But this particular area, having so much large watershed along with so many single-family residents, that we are out there almost every 2 weeks checking the ditch itself. We find any obstructions, we find any debris, we make sure we remove it as quick as possible. And again, no ditch in the county has had more money spent on it in the last 3 to 4 years than the Scott Ditch.
And respectfully, the plan just might not be working.
I think they are, respectively. I don't think that, in my 8 years, we've probably had 15 calls. We've saw the ditch out of its bank twice, and that is in the north of the Winfield area. And that is property that's owned by Kyle Tom. Since we've removed the debris downstream, that has not happened. We haven't, in 40 years of research, we have not found one property claim on that Scott Ditch, not one. And we haven't, and I know definitely in the 8 years that I've been there, we've had calls about potential flooding, we've had calls where the water is high, but not one property claim. And when you take a look at Winfield Addition in particular, 2 detention basins are in that particular subdivision that were constructed and then made part of the county assessment ditch. They fill up as designed, and then they release at a very slow rate. So there is water, and there's photos of where these ditches are at the max capacity, just like they were designed to be. But they haven't went into any homes, they haven't caused any property damage. And we have maintained those 2 detention basins. 2 years ago, we went in and cleaned all those out.
And I've actually spoken with residents that it has gone into their property, and they have made calls. So I'm just bringing that up for a record. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr. Engel?
let's stay with the Scott Ditch. You said the Scott Ditch is to the south of this development? It's to the west, isn't
It's
it?
directly to the west. It runs from the north to the south.
Do you anticipate an impact from this development on the Scott Ditch?
Not a negative impact at all, no. The coefficiency for farmland is very similar to what the coefficiency for hard surfaces, asphalt, rooftops, concrete.
Runoff coefficient.
Runoff coefficient. Thank you. And you combine that with the fact that you are going to have grass area that has higher saturations than what is already there. Then you throw in 8 to 10 retention basins that'll hold the water on site. So we feel, and I think Elijah and I both will support this, that there's going to be less discharge coming off of this property after construction as there is currently.
Yeah, and I'll reiterate, the detention or retention ponds that we're talking about is the solution that the whole country uses to handle stormwater runoff. So when development happens, these ponds get put in place to prevent flooding from downstream or on downstream properties. It's why we're looking at one to be expanded for the Bachmeyer Trace area. It is that solution that helps release that water slowly. So for an analogy, before Texas Roadhouse was remodeled, you would go in and there was a big room to the side where you put your name in and you go wait in that room. The dining room doesn't have the capacity to handle everyone. But as people left, somebody from the waiting room would go in. And so that water is like those people coming to dine. There's not room in the dining room for everyone. There's not room in the streets or the neighborhood downstream for all that water to get there at once. But if you release it slowly, everybody gets to dine. The water has the infrastructure has the capacity to handle the water that's coming to it. So it lasts longer. The water gets released for a longer period of time, but there's no peak discharge that's too much for the infrastructure that's there.
I might add, if we're some of us old enough here, 60s, 70s, and 80s, we had no restrictions on our subdivisions, none whatsoever for stormwater runoff. We could design and construct whatever we want to, and we didn't concern ourselves with downstream or upstream results. That all started changing in the 90s, and of course lawsuits is probably responsible for that. The state set down requirements. Your UDO was adopted approximately 12 years ago, and up until that time, you had the 1969 planning ordinance. It had never been updated. So those subdivisions, such as Bachmeyer Trace, and even though that was designed for that particular site, but it didn't take into all the considerations that we have to now, all the restrictions we have to now, all the cost to the developers. And here we have a situation where homeowners associations is going to maintain these basins. And if they don't, then again, you go back to the ordinance and you can fine them. Or you can do the construction yourself and prove it and then lay a big fine on them. So,
You know, I see that as a big part of the review process and our office's job as a whole is it's our job to make sure things get built correctly, but it's also our job to look at projects and situations uniquely and make sure they don't impact neighborhoods, neighboring residents, because ultimately, if they don't handle it appropriately, in 10 years when this gets fully developed, I'm going to be the guy they call. And so it's really to my benefit to try to make sure it gets done properly the first time. So that's an important piece of this. I mean, we're not there yet. We don't have a design submitted, but that is all part of this process.
I won't be there in 10 years.
Mr. President, one more
Mr.
question.
Engel.
I don't want to belabor this, but so this development will not drain to the west. It will not drain the Scott Ditch.
Eventually it will. Eventually there'll be a partial runoff to the west.
And how will that happen? It's not going to run over the
Well, we
road?
don't know that yet until the final plans are designed, but I would anticipate that those retention basins on the west side, if they have a release, if they have an overflow, then it will have to be piped underneath South 37th Street.
Which there are existing culverts underneath 37.
Okay.
that would
There are
likely
existing
probably handle
culverts now.
Great.
But until we get through this phase and we can get the hard plans in front of us, I mean, they haven't even done a topographical survey to make the determination of what they're going to do with how the houses, how the roads will be constructed. This is all spec, this is primary. You guys have all been through this before. We're a long way from seeing that final project.
Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Mr. President.
I think I heard Mr. Purcell first.
So I would assume that at this point, you do not know what the capacity above the standing levels of these retention ponds will be, total capacity.
No, we do not at this point. That will be given to us for review and approval later down the road.
Thank you.
Councilor Taylor.
If there's an issue with the drainage after this has been developed, who is going to be held liable for any changes that will be needed?
Well, you have a recourse, first of all, this gentleman's department, if they're in violation of any of the city codes, if they're doing anything that, let's say, could hurt that ditch, then it'll probably be a joint effort like it is here in making sure that those issues are corrected. The good thing here is we have a homeowners association that we can go to and hold responsible for that.
Good.
Well, the other thing about this is there'll be performance bonds. When you develop at this level, you don't just walk away. There are performance bonds that are in place, usually for 5 years, so that if there are issues, there's money there to cover the cost.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Now, in Section 7 of your ordinance you passed 2 weeks ago is compliance and enforcement. And part of that is all the bonds and maintenance bonds, performance bonds.
Okay.
And you'll have those for a number of years, and if they don't live up to it, then you can take the bond and do it yourselves.
Mr.
you.
Parker.
One of the things that concerns me a little bit about this is that you keep saying that we have a right to change things or whatever later on, and that's not true. The primary plat process does not come back to council. We don't have that,
It goes back to your plan commission.
right? Not to us at all.
You're asking me a question, I'm here to address
And then-
drainage.
Okay,
Drainage.
and then they do not come back to us.
They come.
Is that right?
They come back to us for primary plat approval.
No, they do not.
They don't?
No.
Are you shaking your head? Okay.
That would proceed through the plan commission.
Secondary plat?
That's my understanding.
So we don't have any say-so once it's out of here.
But we have a professional staff that we're paying to take care of that.
Well, I don't know that the planning commission can be called professional staff. They're like we are, they're either elected or appointed.
Well, if you want to change the state statute, Larry, you can, or you can try, but that is what is required by Indiana state statute.
The other question I have is, you said the Scotch ditch can get to capacity now.
I've seen it at capacity in the 100-year range, and there's no way in the world that you can design for the 1 in 100, the 1 in 500 range.
Right, and we
They
have.
never-
And we have several 100 rains a year for some reason or
Some
other.
reason, and you're absolutely right,
Yeah.
Mr. Parker, we do.
So these retention ponds, all 8 of them, are going to have to hold all that water until that ditch goes down before they can release anything.
I doubt very seriously from the plan.
And they can't.
I doubt very seriously from the plan that I have seen that all 8 or 10 of those retention basins will discharge into the Scott Ditch. It'll have a freeboard in those retention ponds to allow it to fill up, and that's all going to be determined during the design phase.
But I would, again, reiterate that the idea of these ponds is the hydraulic grade line, where that water will be today, if you were to look at it on a certain rain, it will be lower because the water from the development, or any development, along with upstream developments, gets detained and released slower. So it's going to drop that hydraulic grade line. And again, we put in ponds to improve flooding situations. So this would act in that same way. It should reduce the hydraulic grade line, not increase it.
Keyword is should.
It will.
Yeah, I mean, that's the design, that's the.
It will.
That's the.
It should.
I think you have to keep in mind.
Let's go on.
Mr. President,
Mr. Goss.
so the last time we had that long week of rain, I went and checked out the flooding there at the end of Geraldine Lane. And then I followed the ditch up the road to Walmart, and Walmart has a large retention pond in the back of Walmart. And even after a week's worth of rain, it barely had any water in it, which I thought was kind of odd. And then I've also went and checked out behind the Kroger Plaza, as well as the Big Lots, and then up there on the mall. And you mentioned that our shopping centers are draining into those ditches. Is there any way we can come back? I know these were all developed before we had the storm runoff rules. Is there any way we can come back and get some retention ponds on those properties to alleviate some of that?
Yeah. There's really no recourse to go back for development until it gets redeveloped. So part of our standards is if something is developed and it gets redeveloped, so detention would, at that point, if it's not already there, would be a requirement. The other piece of that is those ponds are designed not only for small storms, they're designed for big storms. So the majority of the volume that you see in them are really designed for a 100-year storm. So a 100-year storm, we require to be released at a pre-developed 10-year rate, and a 10-year storm at a pre-developed 2-year rate. So not only are we releasing it slower, we're releasing it exponentially slower. I mean, it's a step beyond just releasing a 100-year slower. I mean, there's steps that are taken. So sometimes, a lot of times, I guess the outfall structures, the discharge structures are two-stage. So you have one for smaller storms and one for bigger storms, which is why, until you get a 100-year storm, which what we've seen this year, we've not been close to that. And we've had a couple 10-year storms. But that's why you don't see full ponds.
I really believe that the county has a little more flexibility in this case with the assessment ditch, because we've used our muscle, and I won't call out the particular property, but they had shopping carts that they parked along the road, and then they ended up in our ditch. Kids just love to put them in the ditch. And the detention basin right north of that location, privately owned, privately maintained, it was filled with debris, and we went in and required them to clean up all their detention basin. And we required the company that owns the shopping carts to come and get them and move them out of harm's way. So, again, I think the county has a little more, but as far as the capacity of them, no, I don't think that we can go back and reinvent or redesign.
Any further questions for these gentlemen? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are now going to begin our public hearing. And as we've done historically, comments will be confined to 3 minutes. Mr. Sickman will be, because I can't see very well, reading who's to be speaking, and he'll be our timer. So I'll let you take the floor.
All right, thank you. We will start with Carol Green.
My name is Carol Green, and I live in Sandbridge Hills. While I still have many concerns and misgivings on this Smith Hill project, my focus this evening will be on the water. In the Western Wayne News, and I'm going to quote, "These issues will be, in the next phase, we will be able to address the issues you brought forward. I feel like these issues should be brought forward before moving to pass this ordinance. There should be this comprehensive studies It should be published in the findings of these studies. The corrections should be made, then move on. I just, and it needs to have a period of time to make sure it works. We as taxpayers and homeowners deserve the very best that this city can and should provide. And that's making sure that our properties stay viable and safe. My fear is the water issue is going to be shoved right down into Sandbridge Hills. After a hard rain, I'm going to be sloshing around in my living room, ankle deep in water, just to hear somebody say, gee, we're awful sorry, but it's too late. There's nothing we can do now. Someone said, Bachmar Trace, there's nothing they can do. I want to make sure that something is done before it's done, to make sure it works, to make sure our house is safe and viable. And we who live on that edge I think have every right to voice our concerns and make sure that our properties are viable and protected. Because I don't want to hear my insurance agent call me and say, sorry, Malcolm and Carol, your insurance is gone, as we're sloshing around in our living room. Please do first what needs to be done first.
Charlie Osterman.
I'm Charlie Osterman, 3 King Garwood Road. Main thing I'm looking at is the size of the lots. What I did, I took all the additions around there, the R2, and measured them, every single one of them. Went on Zillow and seen what's going on, and the average lot size is approximately 0.3 acres. And if you look at the acres that the lots they have on here, it's like the cottages are 0.08, less than 1/10 of an acre. Now, the only problem I have is kind of like, well, you get smaller lots, more traffic. It's like, is it really necessary to have lots that small? And the average has been 0.3. And I've got the proof. I got the proof right here. And what I did, I just took an average, and you are welcome to look at my numbers. Thank you very much.
Dave Pointis.
Hi, I'm Dave Pointis, and I have lived on Bachmeyer Road for almost 40 years with my wife, Susan. We have seen over the years several new additions going around us, and one important thing that stands out to us is that the new subdivisions blended in with the established neighborhoods. They were all complementary and good for the area. We made, my wife and I, the largest purchase of our lives. We researched the homes, we checked out the current zoning before we moved in, and that's why we moved in, because the zoning was what it was. And there was the capability to put apartments in, but they were on the north side of Bachmeyer. It's already set up that way. But now, we've changed from apartments to townhouses, but it's still similar as far as capacity. And some of the small lot sizes like we're talking about, just seems like the density is a lot more than what we were expecting. We were expecting the zoning board to protect us as individuals in these neighborhoods. We are opposed to the development for some of the reasons that have already been mentioned, the density of the people. Based on a recent census information for Richmond, we have an average of 1,488 people per square mile. That was as of 2020, or 186 people per 80 acres. Based on that information for the development we're talking about, they are projecting 288 units, let's say 3 individuals per unit, or 864 people for 80 acres. That's 4.6 times the Richmond average. If you add that to the current apartments that are in the area, that are east of a Walmart, and the 30-plus acres of undeveloped land on 37th Street that still remains, 8 acres of which is already zoned M2, the density in this 1 square mile is quite concerning. This 1 square mile is basically from Henley Road to Garwood Road and from Route 40 to Hodgen Road. That's 1 square mile. Our other concerns are the concerns that have been talked about tonight as far as the heavy rains. As we all know, the rain conditions seem like they're getting worse every year, that we get 3 inches one day and we might get 3 inches the next day. I don't know what a retention pond does with the back-to-back storms that are of this level. That needs to be addressed when we're talking about all these ponds. Of course, the retention ponds has been increased to address some of those issues.
Time, Mr.
And
President.
the size of the development, it's just a lot of ponds for that amount of space.
That was your time.
Okay, to wrap up, I would like to say that the people of the existing neighborhoods, which we all live in a neighborhood that's existing somewhere in this town, look for protection from the Zoning and Planning Board, and if that fails, to the City Council. We are looking for you, the City Council members, to vote against this proposed ordinance. Thank you.
Next is Carol Calentis.
It's actually Carrie
My apologies.
Calentis. And my husband Randy and I live on Sandbridge Drive. In addition to the concerns that have been raised already about water, congestion, the thoroughfares, demand, market rates, and taxpayer dollars, we would like to share our observations about the overall approach to the Smith Hill rezone petition. This is really, for us, about the why and not the what, who, why, and why not. First, the address in the notices from the Planning Department had the address incorrect, referring to Southwest 37th rather than South 37th. I believe that happened twice. Thank you to Mr. George. We all learned that the required waiting period from the first petition to public hearing had not been satisfied. I mean, no disrespect to the mayor, but we were all baffled that less than 1 month into his new term, the mayor spoke in favor of the petition. We had no alternative to walk away believing that he did not consider the adjacent residents and how we would be impacted. Otherwise, we believe he should have reached out for our opinions, or at the very least, wait until he heard from us at the planning and council meetings before reaching a conclusion. During the meetings, the 3-minute rule was not consistently applied. Some, either side, were allowed 5 and 6 minutes. At the April 15th council meeting, the order was changed, and those who opposed had to speak first. We scratched our heads and were curious as to whether this has ever been done in council history. Maybe someone can answer that for us. Second petition, the notice regarding the public hearing on July 24th was sent before it was officially referred by council to the Planning Commission. Our notice was postmarked July the 8th, 2 days prior to it being officially added to your agenda. Smith Hill has been described by proponents as a community project. We disagree. A real opportunity has been missed to say that this is a true community project. Please correct me if I am wrong, but we do not believe any resident from the surrounding neighborhoods were ever included in the first or second plan. We are the very community members who live in the area, travel in and out of our neighborhoods, use South 37th, Garwood, Bachmeyer, and Henley on a daily basis. Community leaders should have invited those directly impacted to the table to discuss and work through our concerns. It is how you resolve conflicts successfully and how you build a stronger community. Rather, it feels as those community leaders involved only those who stand to gain. We are disappointed as to why those who will lose were not included. I do want to mention a thank you to Council Members Burkhart and Purcell for your efforts to make that happen. These are just a few reasons why we've lost trust and confidence that our interests will be protected should the petition be approved as proposed. Servant leadership
That's
is
the
about
time.
serving and protecting your people. Thank you all for listening. We feel heard and have appreciated your support. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you, Carrie.
Don Otto.
Auto 1120 Danbury. I've lived in Richmond since I was 3, and when I built in 2008 what I hoped to be my final home, I was confident this land and debate would stay R2. Never did I think it would dissolve into an area with so many types of lots and homes, filled with many cars parked outside and 26 buildings lining 37th. This is already the most dense square mile of Richmond. We've listened to many people in support of this plan, both here and at planning, to talk about Richmond needs, not this specific piece of land, which we have been reminded should be the focus. The average wage and home sale price in Richmond is well below what the PUD has to offer. A $300,000 home with conventional mortgage, taxes, insurance, and HOA is over $2,000 per month, too high for most to afford. Currently, our needs seem to be more urgent in homes slightly under $250,000 on more affordable land. Even if we attract new business, the majority of their employees won't make more than $60,000 to $70,000 a year. Richmond has to address many other areas of concern to even attract new business. The ability to sell homes from $250,000 to $375,000 will be a challenge, and no good developer can afford more than 2 to 3 spec or model homes of any type at any time, with carrying costs and construction on finished and empty homes, or construction and finished homes. No one builds another spec until selling one they are carrying in their inventory. So the idea this can be done in 5 or 10 years is unrealistic. The property tax projections we have seen before are for a completed subdivision, which takes several years. We all know that 14 homes above 750, which was the original presentation, are extremely unlikely in a congested area so close to Richmond's retail, surrounded by homes of much lesser value. Buyers who can afford these tend to live a bit farther from this location and layout. Additionally, when Mr. Stump had the neighborhood meeting about the original ordinance to rezone, many of his responses to questions seemed ambiguous and contradictory. However, one question answer that stands out after listening to everything, I asked very plainly, so if the rezoning fails for apartments, you are out of here? To which he replied, yes, I will be. And heard by dozens of residents. However, I see now that was not the case. If housing is a major obstacle, why wasn't this land slated for development before Reed purchased in 21? They should consider housing development on land north of 70 rather than the busiest part of town. Locations on anywhere in the north side would not disrupt the investments and livelihoods of the residents adjacent to this PUD. Lastly, if this master plan fails, what will happen next? If the rezoning is approved, what will they really do? How do we know the homes won't be purchased, then leased out by businesses and individuals? With all the issues presented in the last 6 months, I foresee more problems with the approval of this ordinance. And I want to add, after Gordon spoke, that I live at the south end of 37th. There's 2 ditches, one in my backyard and one on the 37th Street side, on the east side. It's totally dry. My backyard is in a constant state of flood. So we do get a lot. I have trash, gravel, water in my ditch most of the time, and on the other side of the fence, it's totally dry. I've talked to Gordon about it recently, and they hope they can help me fix that problem, and I've never turned in any damage for my retaining walls falling down. So anyway, thank you for your time and attention to all of us that are so adversely affected by this PUD. Thank you.
Next is Gary, and I'm having trouble reading your last name, Gary. It looks like maybe Wigging, W-I-G-G? Wiggins.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Gary Wiggins. I live 707 Garwood Road. I've been there 39 plus years. Mr. Turner just expressed this evening that with 100% confidence that all these problems are going to be taken care of before this project moves forward. I'd like to know, since the city's going to be involved in a lot of this thing when you address the traffic and whatever, for 30 years, I have been trying to get improvements on Garwood Road because of the safety of Garwood Road. It is not safe today. So if you add all the new 55 and older community that you people have already approved, and you add this one, and then your study comes back and says, this is what needs to be done, The city's always broke. Every time you ask them something, they're broke. I asked for an arm and a light to be applied to each electric pole down Garwood Road. Oh, we can't afford that. How in the world are you going to afford millions of dollars to take 3 county roads and make them, the 3 bordering county roads, and make them to city standards, if in fact that study comes back? That's a question I have for you. And I have a prepared speech, but this question came up after Mr. Turner convinced us 100% that all these things will be taken care of. I need some assurances where he's going to get his money.
I think I was referring to stormwater.
Pardon me?
I was referring to the stormwater.
Oh, I see, okay. I'll start my speech now.
You only have 3 minutes.
The question came up after the fact, that's why. I've been to 4 of these meetings, and 3 minutes is never enough time for us to tell you people. The opposition gets all the time that they want. They can talk, bring 4 or 5 other people up with them, let them talk.
You're using your minutes.
That's because you're running a bad position here. I think there was some confusion between the city and some citizens as to why many of us are against this development. That's it. We're not against building homes or growth for our city. We just feel that this particular project is not good for Richmond. The chamber president, EDC leader, Reed Hospital, IU rep, Ivy Tech rep, and others have all given projections, needs for the city of Richmond, but none of the people have spoken for this project. Not one person at 2 planning commission meetings or the last council meeting about this project has said, I want to buy one of those houses. I would love to live in that development. In reality, what they have said is, it would be a good place for our out-of-town employees working in Richmond. It would be a good place for the people that I hire to live. It would be a good place to put our employees so they would not quit their job and take a job at a hospital.
I'll give you an extra minute. You've used your 3, but I'll give you 1 more.
It would be a good place for the people I hire to live. It would be a good place for our employees so they would not quit their job here and take a job at a hospital in a city where they are living. It'd be a good place to put other people is the message that they convey. Nobody can tell people where to live. It's a personal choice for each of us. The city faced this problem many years ago when the firefighters and police officers had to reside in Richmond to keep a job as a first responder. The city soon found out that they couldn't keep good personnel, and now for many years they have not had that requirement. Many of these first responders live in surrounding areas, and we haven't had noticeable problem because of it. I think it's absurd.
That's it, Gary. That's. With respect to other folks who'd like to speak.
Corey George.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Corey George. I live at 1070 Radcliffe Court. With permission, I was just in a meeting with the mayor today, and we talked about honesty and integrity and collaboration. So I will try to use respect, but I do believe firmly in much of this. So in basing my comments, I would like to reference Plan Development District 4.0, which is part of the Unified Development Ordinance. But also, I want to address some things that were really not said correctly. When the developer spoke, he indicated there would be no apartments. We know that's correct. He then said there were 100 homes removed from the design. Please ask him where those homes are, because there were not. Maybe 2, maybe 1, maybe a little bit of bad math on my part. He also said the districts were simplified and were essentially R2. When you look at the matrix of homes that are being presented, or units, as I'll call them, to not use language incorrectly, 56% of the units are UR, townhomes, cottages, and villas. 39% are Sunrise or Brookside, which are below R3 standards. And 14 homes meet R2 standards. So when he says they essentially meet R2 standards, that's far from the truth. So in referencing 4.0, what should guide us why we do a planned development district, your document tells us the intent, the regulations, and the prerequisites. The intent is so that a variance is not necessarily needed just to accomplish this. If 4.8% of the homes meet the base district, what's the PD being used for? It's being used for something that is very far outside of the scope of a PD, depending on how you define flexibility. 96% outside of the base district seems to exceed flexibility for me. Reading through the document, there's also a few things that are worthy of pointing out. Plan Commission, which I understand is not you all, has to make a decision that this is a clear benefit to the community. Based upon what we've heard in all the meetings before and today, who can make a clear decision for or against this topic? I contend no one. Common Council, this document says under no circumstances are you required to rezone this property. There's your answer. You're not required to do this. But if you do, you can put stipulations on the property or on the ordinance, commitments as it's called. So maybe commitments that it not be so dense. Maybe it be more like the base zoning district. Maybe it would eliminate some of the problems that we've heard about today. I contend it would. Math tells you it would as well. If you do the math around the number of homes, I'm no mathematician, so I'm not going to try. 8,000 square feet is R3. R2 is 12,000 square feet. So how can the difference be as presented by the developer? It's mathematically impossible.
That was your time, Corey.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
And,
Corey.
Corey.
take care.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Curtis Wichard.
Evening, Council, Mayor.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm going to try not to hit on everything that's already been said once or twice or three times. Everybody says Scott Ditch, Scott Ditch, Scott Ditch. Is there any way you can bring up the development plat on the screen again? I just want to address the biggest retention pond
Well-
that is right in the corner of my yard. Okay, anyway.
What we want to hear, are you for or against the
Against it.
project?
Yeah, I'm totally against it, yeah. So is my wife. It's because this development is gonna be right in the corner of our backyard, and that detention pond is gonna be right there. So is that detention pond gonna be built up in that corner? Because that whole hill, detention pond comes down and flattens out in our backyard. So if for some reason that detention pond gets full and it spills over, it's coming right into our backyard. I mean, that's one concern I have. I've ditched the idea of the well because I may be talking out of my head and thinking that it could contaminate my well. Sure, the ground was a filter. But other concerns are people coming into Richmond for these houses. Yeah, I understand you're going to come into Richmond for save gas money, back and forth and commute to work. But what do we have to offer here in Richmond other than housing, places to eat? Everybody coming over here just to go check out the Madonna of the Trail or our three mummies in the museum, Football Hall of Fame. We don't have an amusement park here. This is a retirement city. Unfortunately, I didn't move out when I was young, and I've been here for 55 years. And I don't see anything exciting going on here. I don't see why people would want to come here and buy a $250,000 home that they can't afford and struggle to make it when they're commuting from Ohio to go to work at Belden or Silgan or any of the other plants here in town that are normal workers that are out in the plant moving around stuff in a stamping plant. I mean, it doesn't seem like these people are going to move to Richmond because of housing. I'm not sure. I'm not going to address a whole bunch of other things other than the fact that I did talk to Elijah this morning, whether you knew it or not. And I'm addressing the drainage on Garwood Road. They put up a berm, the city put up a berm along the side of the road. As you come down Bachmar and go down the hill, there's a house that has a block wall right there. I'm the next house down that flattens out. It floods down that street, knocked out all that gravel into the road, and it floods out right into my two driveways. I I mean, that's more of a concern to me than the Scott ditch, which I'm not really sure which side of the street it's on, or if that's the ditch that's going underneath 37th Street. So, I mean, I'm concerned about the water drainage on Garwood, because there's nothing there to contain the water, to move the water out of the way. There's no drainage there. It just comes straight in my yard.
Okay, your time's done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Connie Locker.
Everyone.
Good evening.
Evening.
Connie Locker. I live at 3714 Sandbridge Drive in Sandbridge Hills, and I will tell you that this addition, this development will be in my backyard. I do want to mention that water does stand currently in the field just behind me, so that's something to note as we move forward. I stand in opposition of the zoning proposal today for some of the very same reasons you've already heard, those we've talked about prior. There's no solutions to the current issues we've brought forward. I understand that as you have a plan, there will be things that'll have to be addressed and new plans made. We talked about water issues. Currently, no solution to that. I understand it's been worked on. I'm not certain the community that's having the issue is aware of that. There's been no solution to the current traffic issues that exist without this addition. No significant change to the density issue. I understand there's less homes. However, it's not enough. The density is overwhelming and certainly out of character for the rest of the surrounding area. There's no change, at least I'm understanding, no change to regarding 11th Street development requesting TIF dollars. I strongly oppose that. The one change that has occurred from the original plan was the elimination of the apartments. And I understand the child care, just to insert what looks like to me, appears to me, low-end townhomes that could potentially and most likely be sold to investors for rental incomes. You know, and I know that this would negatively impact the property values of those that are adjacent to these dwellings over time. Please know that I am in favor of change, and I state very emphatically today that it is time for such. Let's change our infrastructure first to accommodate our growth. Let's rebuild our downtown, bring retail and dining opportunities to Richmond, recruit employers that will take a vested interest in staying the course with us, to take steps to make Richmond a place that people want to work and live. Let's rebuild also by putting our current citizens and residents at the forefront of our planning so that we consider our entire community. Let's look at the whole picture and do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mary Ellen Donat.
My address is 3490 Dorothy Lane. So you are all dedicated public servants, and I know that's not an easy job. Two great men, Bing Welch and Jack Elstro, are overseeing these proceedings. They're from different sides of the aisle. I spoke at Bing's funeral, and until the day he died, Jack called me at least once a week to hear that Mary H., and then the last thing he said to me was, "See ya, pal." So just like Bing and Jack, you are all good friends. both sides in favor and in opposition. We're all good friends, hopefully. Yeah. So while we're all citizens, taxpayers, and constituents and residents by choice, most of those who are opposed have a dog in this fight because we have homes that are adjacent to this development. Mr. Stumpf is none of those things, and I have yet to hear what would happen if the TIF monies were not involved with this development. Now, the slideshow indicated that the population is moving to larger cities. So this development, as planned, could result in partial completion and/or housing surplus, especially with the great Elder Beerman plans that Earlham's in charge of that grant. So I want to say that most of us who are in opposition are not in opposition of developing this land. We're just in opposition to developing it with so many homes that would add to the congestion and all of the problems that you've already heard. It seems that Mr. Stumpf wants to put the cart before the horse. The primary plat and CAD drawings should be submitted first, and also the traffic studies completed. We haven't heard the in favor arguments yet, but probably they would apply to any number of parcels without encumbrances such as rezoning and the requirements that are regulations for retention ponds. So we've heard that this will increase the density by 10 to 15%. I don't know about that with that many homes coming in. But as a resident in that area, I know that it is very difficult to leave, to get out onto 37th Street, onto Bachmeyer Road, and onto Henley. So we need to take care of these current problems first.
That was your time.
One more thing to say. There is so much to do in Richmond. My husband and I moved back here because there's so much to do. Most of it's free.
Thank you.
And it's wonderful.
Thank you very much for that.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Dennis Rome.
Excuse me. Good evening.
Good evening.
Honorable council members, and I appreciate the service you give to this wonderful community. I am not going to read the script that my staff prepared. I thought instead of, because I'm new, just celebrated my first year here, many of you do not know me well. So after my first experience on this same issue, decided I'm going to speak from my heart tonight, not from my head. So I want to share with you something that happened a long time ago when I was responsible for help raising 12 nieces and nephews. Jeffrey came home, 8 years old, 3rd grade, 4th grade. He was very distraught. I said, "What's going on?" He says, "Uncle Dennis, it was recess." So I'm dating myself, right? Because he's like 46 or 7 today. But he said, when it came time for recess, the teacher said we had a choice. We could have kickball or we could play tag. So she asked those students who would like to play kickball, raise your hand. Those students who like to play tag, raise your hand. Majority was kickball. So they played kickball instead. I said, "Well, you got recess, you got to play. What are you upset about?" He says, "Why couldn't we do both?" Words of a 7, 8-year-old. Why can't we do both? I said, "What would that look like?" He said, "If a majority wanted kickball, maybe we could have devoted more time to that, but the others will still get to play hide and seek." Whenever we approach, as a city, as a state, challenges with zero-sum perspectives, there are no winners. I am convinced that we can do both. We can address some of the issues on the opposing side, as well as continue to create adequate housing for people who would like to be part of this wonderful community. And I assure you that Indiana University East is committed to supporting, engaging, and doing more for this community. We believe we can make progress that strengthens us in ways we've never seen before. In order to do that, I have to hire the most qualified people in positions. And IU East is not an institution that works remotely. We are community-facing, student-facing. We need people in person. Remote work is not an option for us. I have lost talent because of the challenges in finding adequate housing
That
in
was
this
your
region.
time, I'm afraid.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris Little.
I had him as against.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
Chris Little. I'm the Chief Operations Officer at Earlham College. I was here a few months ago and spoke on the same proposal. One of the areas I oversee is human resources, and we currently employ about 350 employees. Student enrollment is just under 1,000. We pride ourselves on being a residential college. Fortunately for us, we can provide housing for the students, but that's not the case for the employees. We want the students to live on campus because we want them to embrace living and learning in the same community. We also expect that with our employees to be able to live and work in the same community. The challenge that we see when we're hiring folks to come to Richmond for these good jobs is that oftentimes they don't have the variety or availability of housing. Sometimes that results in them declining the job offer and going elsewhere. Other times it results in them finding a place that's outside of Richmond. They then therefore have to commute to work. And that's not really what our employees that seek out Earlham and come to Earlham want to do. They want to be here in Richmond. They want to be close to the college. So that being said, we support the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Roxy Deer.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Roxy Deer, and I serve as the Executive Director for Richmond Neighborhood Restoration. As many of you know, R&R restores historic homes, and we are excited to support this project. We know that housing developments in the small Midwestern communities are not just a good idea, but an essential part to our future. Recently, R&R sold our most recent project for close to $300,000. We had it on the market for less than a month. One of the foremost reasons to embrace this development is the need for diverse housing. As our community evolves and will continue to evolve, so must our approach to housing. We need various types of housing, everything from single-family homes to apartments, duplexes, townhomes, everything. The lack of diversity that currently exists is troublesome for recruiting, as you've heard from our employers, but it also is troublesome for young professionals. As you may know, not every young professional wants to live in a 150-year-old home, but they do love the modernization of the townhomes that you saw promoted today. I loved hearing that they come with amenities like lawn care and upkeep like that. It's attractive. I find it attractive even for myself and would love to live in one. Design and housing is always important. Size is always important. Modern families want large kitchens, natural light. They want big bathrooms, updated HVAC and environmental issues concerned as well. Those are all being addressed in this project, and we're thankful that those are being addressed at the beginning. Finally, the location of this project is significant. I didn't mention, but I do live in the Hunters Point neighborhood. This east side portion of Richmond is a safe space. It's attractive to young families, and I think that's important. I grew up on this side of town many of my neighbors, former neighbors, are here today speaking on this project, and many of them will say it's the neighborhood, the safety of that community that attracted them there as well. Low crime and great neighbors makes a great place to live, and I hope that today when we walk away from this meeting, we're reminded of the community that we love and why we choose to build and think about the future, not just for today, but for the next generations, our children, our grandchildren, and our great-great-grandchildren, giving them great places to live. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Roxy.
Valerie Schaefer.
Good evening, Valerie Schaefer, President of the Economic Development Corporation of Wayne County and residing at 39 Circle Drive here in Richmond.
Good evening. Good evening.
As I shared with you at the last public hearing, housing has become an economic development priority for the EDC under our new strategic plan that received input from residents, elected officials, and business leaders. That plan identified that in order to enhance our quality of life, it must be prioritized, and that is to help us recruit and retain industry, as well as our residents. Enhancing our quality of life allows our employers to attract and retain the talent that they need to be successful. The strategic plan further identified that removing barriers for our community to be an attractive place to live and work includes the lack of housing. For those reasons, housing has become a new sector that the EDC is working in. Much like other economic development projects, public-private partnerships are often necessary to close the deal. When infrastructure extensions are factored in markets such as Richmond, oftentimes the cost to build a home is often higher than the ending market value. This is especially true with larger developments such as Smith Hill, when lot prices include the extension of roads, sidewalks, streetlights, and all of the utilities. Communities across the nations are now becoming partners with housing developments to buy down the cost of the infrastructure so that we can buy down the cost of lot prices, in turn making the homes more affordable for the community. Many communities can't even find developers to invest in their communities, so they have to do it themselves. Smaller communities like nearby Rushville are buying land and putting in all of the infrastructure themselves and then finding builders to build homes in those neighborhoods. We are fortunate to have a developer willing to invest in our community. Smith Hill will be asking for city participation in the infrastructure costs, but that is not what we are asking for you to approve tonight. If the rezoning is approved, the next step will be to finalize infrastructure estimates so that we can begin to discuss that financial partnership. Yes, TIF has been identified as a potential financing vehicle, but there are other loan programs that have recently been developed throughout the state that we can consider as well. And with all these opportunities, we will be working with council and the administration to find out a way to collaborate and find the best solution for the city of Richmond. I know that ready funds have also been a topic of discussion. There will be numerous Wayne County projects that are put forward and apply for Ready 2 funding, but we will not know until the end of August which Wayne County projects will score high enough for funding consideration. The zoning approval tonight will make this project viable for Ready 2. And if it ranks high enough, as I suspect that it will, that may put this project in a position to receive up to 20% of the infrastructure costs to be funded by the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. Ready 2 funding could, in fact, reduce the public contribution that is needed to help move this project forward. At this juncture, I just want to confirm that there have been no financial commitments made to the developer, only the commitment that we will work with them to figure out a partnership that is beneficial to all involved, and we will involve council in that process. This is a unique development opportunity that the EDC hopes that you will support this evening.
Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie.
I've been asked for a seventh inning stretch, and I think probably it's appropriate, now being
Please.
after 9 o'clock. We will reconvene at no later than 9:15.
Thank you, Jesus.
There'll be a lot of large kitchens in there.
I don't have gum tonight.
It is.
I'm not telling you. No, everybody's standing around talking, and I said, guys, I'm leaving, I'll lock the doors. So they weren't locked.
With, you might be more appropriate. Police had gone?
Yeah, everybody was gone except you guys standing around.
Huh.
No, but I can.
Maybe we should ask a police officer.
The next day, I saw some guy come kind of, I'll talk to you about it later, but just make sure everybody knows to leave. Maybe I'm, but I did see him. Now it's on tape.
All right, Mr. Sickman, lead us on.
Okay. Next on the list is Mark Broker.
Good evening. I'm here today discuss the critical role of new housing as subdivision can play success in our community and businesses. As a human resources professional and a strong community advocate, challenges face our workforce like never before. There's a shortage of quality housing that's directly impacting our ability to recruit, retain, and develop talent. A strong workforce is the cornerstone of any thriving community. To attract and retain employees, we have to offer competitive package that extends beyond salary and benefits. Workers today care all about that quality of life, quality of place. That's the deciding factor. When our employees struggle to find suitable housing, it leads to a number of negative consequences: increased absenteeism, decreased productivity, higher turnover rates are just a few of those examples. Thousands come to Wayne County every day, several of whom do not want to and would rather live here. Also, we see people moving from larger cities to smaller ones. They're tired of living in Indianapolis or larger ones. They want to go smaller where they have a feel and they can make a difference. People today now work in a virtual environment or a hybrid where they work only one day. More so, a limited housing supply makes it difficult to recruit new talent. That's hindering our ability to grow and innovate in our community. This housing project addresses all of these directly head on. It would provide much needed housing options for our workforce, improving employee satisfaction and loyalty. Additionally, it's going to attract new people to come and live here. Isn't that what we're here for? Isn't that why you run for office and why we want to do better? It's not for just us. It's for the future generations. It's for the future of Wayne County. Together, by investing in this, investing in the future of our county and our businesses, we can do that. That's where this project stands. On to the next step. To simply say people cannot afford the homes or no one wants to live here, that's unacceptable. We all live here, so why are we keep saying no one? Why would anyone want to live here? My question is, why do we not want people to live here? This is our community and our town. I urge a yes vote so we can keep moving forward in this town. We see it downtown. Just take a walk around. Businesses, old businesses, the fronts are coming off. Old revitalization is happening, and now we can have new as well, and a new day can be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Ballinger.
Not sure.
Good evening, Brian Ballinger, 645 Indiana Avenue. I would like to address two of the common objections that have been raised. First, the proposed density has been questioned for various reasons. The purpose of PUD density has several advantages, two of which are based upon economic factors. A PUD allows for diversity of housing types and price points. This diversity attracts homeowners who are downscaling and upscaling, first-time homeowners, and mid to high-end homeowners. Recent housing studies have indicated that Richmond lacks all of the above-mentioned types of homes. The second component of this question relates to the affordability of the development for the developer. We all have felt the devastating effect of inflation in recent years, whether attempting to balance a personal budget or, harder yet, balancing a city budget. Goods, commodities, and services have risen dramatically. Infrastructure development is certainly not immune to inflation. The easiest way to combat the high cost of infrastructure is to increase the number of housing units per acre. This distributes the cost over a greater number of housing units, effectively reducing the cost for each developed lot. It could be argued that past subdivisions were developed with R2 standards and that developments today should be required to maintain those same density standards. The challenge to that argument is that state and local regulations have changed since many of the current subdivisions in Richmond were developed. The standard that has been most affected is stormwater management. The idea that greater density leads to more runoff is not true in cases where effective mitigation strategies are employed. Engineering and technological advances in stormwater management and mitigation slows the release of water, which slows the destructive forces of rain events. Stormwater management and mitigation strategies are expensive, as any builder or developer can testify. These standards are stringent but necessary to prevent individual homes from flooding and causing disruption to adjacent homes and property. One may still argue that runoff will increase with density. It is not a matter of how much rainwater a property receives, but how much time it takes for the water to move to the next property. I encourage each of you to embrace this opportunity, to welcome and encourage growth, pave the way for our generation and the next, to enjoy the fullness of community where we all grow and prosper together. To deny this proposed PUD can only exacerbate the stagnation we are witnessing today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Eric Van Vliet.
Hello, my name's Eric Van Vliet. I live at 2825 Southeast Parkway. I have to admit, all this talk about rain and flooding has made me nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. I try to overcome that. I do want to talk for this, and I come from more of an academic theme. I look at our legacy of heavy industry. We, like many communities in the Midwest, Kokomo, Muncie, Anderson, Richmond in particular, have really been struck by a series of challenges: business closings, manufacturers going overseas, school closures, shrinking tax base, aging population, vacant properties. You know the drill, you've seen it. I really like the work of Dr. Michael Hicks. He's a professor at Ball State. He's actually visited here in our Quality of Life Conference. I think he's been here several times. He's written a few books about the Rust Belt Syndrome and several papers. One paper in particular that resonates with me is Growing and Declining Places Have Different Challenges. And he introduces a concept there, and it's very simple, and I'll share that with you in a minute. But most people refer to this as Rust Belt. This concept, to me, is more appealing because it's a measurable metric. We can see our progress in this particular concept. And I would love to challenge our community. This is a concept that we should all be discussing at our kitchen tables, our businesses, our boardrooms, and our nonprofits, because I think it really has to do with the fate of our community as we move into the future. It's also a concept that explains all our underlying, or many of our underlying problems and challenges that we experience. And with a word, this concept's already been mentioned today, but it's called depopulation. And in my amateurish efforts, I looked at where we were in 1970. I was the tender age of 20 in 1970, and we were at 44,000 people, our high water mark from what I could determine. Today, we're at 35,700. We've lost roughly 8,300 residents. That's a lot of folks out of a town this size. And I wanted to quote Hicks. Again, I really respect his work. Cities and counties that are shrinking need to confront facts about themselves before they can make any progress. And I think we have to admit where we are on this population issue, because it's a huge issue. It has everything to do with the fate of our community. So as I know we're talking about backyard issues, and I hope we look at our community as all of our backyard. We're all connected like pieces of a puzzle, and we're all at risk. It's incumbent on us. We have to stop the population decline. We've got to develop strategies that attract more people to Richmond, and I think Smith Hill is one of those. And I congratulate them for the effort. And I'll close with this quote from Hicks. With declining birth rates, aging baby boomers, and slowing immigration, the hunt for people will be a race for economic survival for every town and city. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated.
Perfect timing, too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tracy Robinson.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Robinson, and I live at 2911 South East Street here in Richmond. I've been in the real estate business for 28 years with experience in residential, new home construction, light commercial, for sale, and leases. What we are experiencing now is one of the lowest inventory housing crises that we have had in many decades, nationwide and here locally. Lack of inventory is for sure our biggest hurdle. As we give consideration to the Smith Hill neighborhood, I wanted to share some local statistics in regard to who the average buyer and seller is, along with the price range and type of home we see selling. In the last 18 months, 154 homes in the price range of $225,000 to $500,000 have sold within the Richmond city limits. The average days on the market for those 154 homes was 43 days. Statistically, nationally, Indiana, and locally show that baby boomers make up the largest share of sellers at 45%. Sellers aged 69 to 77 years are most likely to downsize. Baby boomers in the silent generation are selling to move closer to their families or because their homes are too large. Millennials are selling because their houses are too small or due to a change in a family situation. Adult composition of home buyer households show that married couples make up the largest group and single females are the second largest purchaser of homes. Younger baby boomers are more likely to purchase a home to avoid renovations. Millennial buyers make up the largest share of home buyers at 38%. Convenience to their jobs and commuting costs are both important to this group. This trend demonstrates the cycle of real estate sales in our area. Some first-time home buyers, dual-income families, and baby boomers downsizing make up 1/3 of the home sales in the price range of $225,000 and above in our area. The southeast geographical area of Richmond continues to lead in the year-to-year comparison of homes sold in the $225,000 and higher price range. In 2022, 97 of the homes sold in this price range, 62 of them were sold on the southeast side of Richmond. That same trend continued through 2023 and year-to-date of 2024. Condominiums and townhomes have become in great need here in our area for multiple reasons. We trend toward an aging community along with single professionals looking for smaller homes. Time? Okay. Thank you.
You still have 17 seconds.
Oh, I did.
17 seconds.
Okay, so let's all keep in mind that newer neighborhoods aren't built in a day or even a year. Regulations have to be met, much planning as needed and required. Smith Hill neighborhood is the beginning of the first steps to meet a great housing need in our area and will allow for churn in the market as baby boomers downsize or first-time home buyers are ready to move into these properties. It will free up homes in both higher and lower price points, which will have a positive impact for home ownership in our community. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris Ham. Oh, sorry. Gotcha. I don't want to mispronounce this first name, so I'm just going to spell it A-C-A-C-I-A, St. John.
Acacia.
Story of my life. Thank you. Hello, Council.
Hello.
My name is Acacia St. John. I'm with Fort Wayne County. I'm the Program Director. Our community development work, community advocacy, and strategic partnerships aim to move Wayne County forward in the best light for all current and incoming residents. We are consistently looking through the 10-year community development lens. What will the community look like in 10 years? Fort Wayne County's goal is to attract, develop, and retain a highly competitive workforce to meet the current and future needs of our area's businesses and industries. We track this progress in many areas with what we call the big indicators of success. I'm here to speak tonight in support of the Smith Hill Development Project. This project aligns to our big indicators of success, specifically population growth and housing. We know that to attract a growing workforce, we must have good wages and a robust selection of housing options. We also know that to keep our workforce, we must have increased wages and housing options that allow for social mobility. As our residents grow their careers and bring in more income, they deserve housing options that grow with them. This development provides townhomes, market rate housing, and premium homes. It supplements the low-income housing, infill housing, apartments, and rehabilitation housing projects already being worked on and proposed in Richmond. All of these options will provide a housing market for residents of all ages and stages of life to choose from with what is best for them. There has been previous concern that these homes are not affordable. Another of our big indicators of success is income. We support and advocate for good wages for residents, as well as training and education that will lead to promotions and increased wages. I'm here to share that the Indiana Department of Workforce Development recently provided data to Fort Wayne County that reflects the average earnings per job in Wayne County in 2023 across all industries was $69,891. That's $33 per hour. I would like to share that's nearly a 20% increase from 2022. This is data paid to employees by our Wayne County employers that is reported to the state of Indiana and the federal government for Department of Labor purposes. The good news is that these current wages in Wayne County will support the cost of these homes. Let's give our residents the opportunity to purchase them. I'll end with a few questions to the council and everyone in this room. What do you envision for Richmond in 10 years? Stagnancy and continued population loss, or strategic efforts for growth and thriving communities? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. William Ducey.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Bill Ducey. I was a peripheral vascular surgeon for 30 years here. That's kind of a mouthful, but basically, my job was to work on any blood vessel that wasn't in the heart or in the brain. So part of what I did was not necessarily critical, but I want to highlight two separate diagnoses that I treated and that vascular surgeons treat and relate that to housing. One is a ruptured abdominal aortic aneurysm. It's the largest blood vessel in your body, and when it ruptures, it's obviously a critical emergency. 80% of people who have that diagnosis don't make it to the hospital. So those that do make it to the hospital, it's critical that time is of the essence and that things are moved along quickly. Another diagnosis that's not quite as critical, but is what's called an ischemic extremity, and that's an extremity that's going to develop gangrene unless it's treated immediately. In other words, there's a blood clot blocking blood vessels. I retired in 2017. Within 2 years, the other two vascular surgeons at Reed left and went to other communities. That left no vascular surgeons at Reed. Reed filled in that hole with temporary surgeons, locum tenens physicians. Oftentimes, they were there a month and gone. So there was a constant need to continue filling that hole with people who were not familiar with the hospital, not familiar with the personnel, the anesthesia department, who was manning the intensive care unit. And so when critically ill patients came in, oftentimes, as good as surgeons as they were, they might be reluctant to operate, not knowing the landscape. More likely to say, I think that patient should go on to Dayton or Indianapolis. That's all well and good, and it sounds fine, except at a minimum, that's going to be a 4-hour delay. You have to make a phone call, you have to get an ambulance, you have to get the patient in the ambulance, get them to the next community, get them to the next hospital. They have to be brought into the next hospital. Somebody has to take their history. All that takes time. And you don't have 4 hours necessarily. So when I was involved in recruiting our next vascular surgeons. We now have 2. It took 4 years to get those 2 surgeons. And 2 years into that search, we had 2 people who were excellent candidates, who came here, loved the community, loved the hospital, couldn't find a home, and went elsewhere. That delayed, that added to another 2 years of the once-a-month new surgeon. And so that directly affects the care and the mortality of our friends, our neighbors, our community, our people, because that's dangerous. And so this lack of housing might be an academic issue to some people, but it's real to me.
Time's up, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kenneth Chrisman.
Good evening.
I think you ended with, it is real. So let me pick it up from there. I'm going to make this personal. It doesn't matter where I work. It does matter that I have a very nice home in Fort Wayne, Indiana. It's absolutely gorgeous. I won't sell it, but I did take a job in Richmond. Everything I needed to learn, to know, to be successful, I learned it here in Richmond, Indiana. When I finished my doctorate, between my sisters and I, we'll have 9 college degrees. One's a psychiatric nurse practitioner. The other one's an attorney with a real estate endorsement. My psychiatric nursing sister asked me, am I crazy for coming back home to Richmond? My pragmatist attorney sister, who has scanned everything about real estate that she can in this community, is asking me, this doesn't make any good business sense. Everything that we needed to learn to be successful came from here. Last 20 years, I've worked for Purdue University. I worked for Mitch Daniels. I worked for Reverend Dr. Floyd Flake, who built over 3,000 homes in Jamaica, Queens, New York. I've seen progress. I've seen things done. I've seen things happen. Now y'all have me sitting here feeling like living in Fort Wayne like I'm from the Wizard of Oz, where there are 5,000 jobs going begging, and they're moving people from outside of the city because they can't find the talent in their town. We started with the infrastructure. We fixed the roads. We fixed the water systems. We did a number of things. We did it in New York. And then we began having these conversations. I'm here to say what I said the first time. 2 things can be right at the same time. Dr. Charlie Nelms, a former chancellor of Indiana University, he's put it this way: all movement is not progress. Every day, Dennis Rome asks me questions, and then he says, I'll hold you accountable. I don't know what's happened in the past, and I can't answer for who's been here. But folks, this community is worthy of better housing. People want to come. I want to come. We want to be here. This is not a housing issue. It's a spirit check. This is not a housing issue. This is a gut check. This is not a housing or a water issue. This is about the true value of this community. Everything I needed to learn, I got from here. And I elected to bring my success back home, to give back and to be back. Let's be transparent. Iceberg Slim said, dollars, dollars, who's got the dollars? You find the dollars, it'll make you holler. It all comes down to money. When you got money, you do what you want to do. The more the money you have, the more decisions you make. The less money you have, the more decisions are made for you.
Yeah.
I'll end with this. I know money's an issue. I know we have a wonderful developer. I just spent the last 2 weekends in Carmel and in Westfield and seen a number of things, and I'll close it with this. We're better than this, Richmond. We're better than the evidence that we have. Let's stop, and I'll say this as a faith leader, and let's pray. And let's pray the prayer of Jabez, expand our territory that we can be more, that we can do more. I support this opportunity. It may not be perfect, but all movement is not progress. I refuse to come back to this community and sit and be idle and watch the same thing perpetually go on and to die and to have less. Amen. You deserve more. Our kids deserve more. In this community, I understand what you said. Thank you. And this community is more. We just got to believe in ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Melissa Vance.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Melissa Vance. I'm the President and CEO of the Wayne County Area Chamber of Commerce, and I live at 931 Winding Ridge. 2 years ago, our Chamber's Board of Directors finalized a strategic plan that included to help grow the number of housing options in Wayne County in order to attract and retain talent for our member businesses. Thus, we hosted the State of Housing recently, and many of you attended that. I appreciate you coming and listening to folks from Tracy Cross and Associates, who we've heard about this evening. Our friends from HWC came and shared best practices, and we felt like it was valuable to bring that insight to our residents and our community leaders. Over the past decade, Wayne County has grown vibrant industry leaders and added jobs in manufacturing, logistics, and healthcare, just to name a few. Wages have significantly increased due to inflation and demand, yet only 57% of our workforce lives in Wayne County. That means that 43% of workers come here to earn a paycheck and take their dollars to other places. 28% of these workers don't even live in an adjacent county, making it even less likely that they're going to spend their dollars locally and support our businesses and our community. They're not paying taxes, they're not sending their kids to our schools, and certainly not buying local. Those who can afford homes like this and desire this type of housing are going to communities where it's available. The ripple effect is that our schools continue to suffer from fewer students and fewer dollars. The quality of life that we want for our residents is less available because fewer people are supporting the small businesses. Lack of attainable housing results in fewer employers willing to locate or grow in Wayne County and fewer graduates finding jobs and the lifestyle that they desire here in Richmond. I recently attended a national chamber conference in Dallas, and housing was one of the main topics that was discussed throughout the week. And over again, we heard that cities that are being proactive are looking at their land as a resource and the future land use of what they have available in their incorporated areas. And because it's a limited supply, the best use is to be very strategic and looking at the density and how you maximize your gain for the resources that you have. And so I encourage you, as you're making decisions, whether it's today on this project or in the future, to be strategic, to be proactive, to plan ahead. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Frame.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mike Frame, Trademark Construction. This is my fourth time here. Well, not at council, 2 times council, 2 times commission, but a lot of people are in the same boat. But I'm glad to be back here because that means we're still have a chance to get some new lots in Richmond, which we really, really need. And we're running out. And if we want new homes in this community, we're gonna need new lots. And having a developer that's willing to do that is encouraging to me. One of the things I've seen from Brian throughout the process is that he's addressed a lot of the concerns. And, excuse me, He's addressed the drainage, he's addressed the traffic, he's addressed the apartments. And, you know, he's trying to meet the needs of the people here and trying to, you know, just do what they want done. I'm just going to be really brief tonight because, you know, I've said a lot of these things. I've heard tonight a lot of things said, and I've just encourage your recommendation for this. You know, it's something we really, really need. Thank you for listening and being here this late.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brad Dungan? Brad DeWinger.
Calling my name was. Hello, I am Brad Dwinger, Wayne County Commissioner,
I apologize.
and I live at 3508 Waterford Drive in Winfield. I'm here to represent the commissioners to speak in favor of the Smith Hill project. A couple weeks ago, we voted unanimously to support this because it went into the county's overall comprehensive plan for growth for Wayne County. If Richmond is successful, all of Wayne County is successful, and we must grow or we're not going to survive. We've got to stop the drain of citizens leaving our community. And this project fits that very well. It has starter homes, it has middle homes, it has move up, and then the cycle, the churn keeps going. You've heard it over and over again. So we unanimously support this project. Also, if you don't know, I am a certified residential appraiser in Wayne County. Even though I'm not here as an appraiser, I am here as an expert in the market data for Wayne County and surrounding area, and I'd like to give you some statistics, just so you kind of see where we are. So this data is pulled from the local MLS. It's from January of 2023 till last Friday, 8/2/24. There's been 1,374 listings. Out of those listings, there's 1,133 homes sold. And this is countywide. That's 82.46%. 97.82% list to sales price. The average days on the market is 63 days. Currently, there is 83 active listings in Richmond, and there's 117 countywide. That gives us less than a 2 months housing supply for the whole county. So in closing, you know, I'll quote one of my favorite movies, you know, if you build it, they will come. And with growth, obviously there is growing pains, but I think we can overcome those growing pains and become a prosperous and vital city and county for everybody to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ken Paust.
First, download the whole map in the App Store.
You wonder if Ken will be for it.
I think he's against.
Good evening, council.
Good evening.
I can appreciate your position this evening, having sat in your seat several years ago, but you do have a real opportunity. 3 hours into our meeting here, I wanted to do a timeline that kind of explain what it took to get to where we are this evening. However, I can't do that in 3 minutes, as you know, as I'm usually accused that I can't say hello in 3 minutes. But briefly, I will say this. And by the way, I do live at 3411 Dorothy Lane, which is in Hale Terrace, and I 100% support this project. I have had the privilege the last 10 years to work not only with the City of Richmond, EDC Department, and the Chamber on trying to bring to this community additional housing. There's a long detail that I could go into all of this as to how we got here, but it did take 10 years, and I'm so pleased to see that we finally have a developer that has been willing to come to Richmond, Indiana to possibly invest his dollars in our community. I've lived in Hale Terrace for 49 years. And during that 49 years, I've had the opportunity to watch the growth. As I said in your position up there, we planned many, many years ago for the development of Richmond. We saw that that was going to be on the southeast side of Richmond. We improved L Street. We improved Hodgin. Along that road, you saw the development. You saw Forest Park, and you saw Winfield come in, then Sandbridge come in, and you have Arbor Trace that come into that area. The 37th Street Road that was built about 25 years ago was planned for so they could handle the large development that we saw coming in that particular area. At the time, we even looked at extending 37th Street clear out to Nee Warner Road, so that that would be kind of a bypass for Richmond. There wasn't funding available to do that at that time. But all of that leads to where you are tonight. We're very fortunate, as I said, to have Smith Hill with us to be able to do this. You folks here have a tremendous opportunity, and it's a real. I hope that what you will do, you will aim high, you'll use your brain, you'll look at all the pros and cons here that have been presented to you, and that you'll believe in us. You'll move forward or you'll go backwards. There is no standing still. You have a tremendous opportunity here to move this community either forward or to move it backward. If you do vote no on this project and do not allow this, I can assure you developers are watching what happens here. You will set this community back another 10 to 15 years. You might say, oh, that couldn't happen. I tell you it can, because I knew it took us 10 years just to get to this point tonight to get one developer. And we've talked to a lot of them. I've been to a lot of communities, a lot of cities, and talked to a lot of developers. So vote yes, so Richmond can continue to thrive for our generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Robin Henry.
Good evening, I'm Robin Henry. I'm retired Vice President of Human Resources. I think the last time I was here, I said I was going to be retired. I am retired. A lot of talking points have already been made, and I'll have a brief summary, excuse me, in my opinion, why this project is important to Richmond. It increases the tax base of our community to address the issues that we currently have: infrastructure, renovating our older neighborhoods and downtown, quality education. We need the funds to support these immediate needs and to support future growth and vitality. This is a project that the entire community will benefit from in the long run. Increasing our population will be a benefit to our existing businesses and future businesses. We will have growth for current businesses to support their bottom line and opportunities for their employees. We will have an increased trained employee talent pool. We are in desperate need of talent employees to fill the jobs that we have and hope to have in this community. Excuse me. We are competing every day, not only within our own community for jobs, but also nationwide. We will have an engaged community members who are vested in our town and who are actually a part of it on a day-to-day basis. And we will be prepared for new businesses to invest in Richmond, knowing that we have a strong workforce to pull from. We have been given this great opportunity with this housing project and the potential of the Ready 2.0 funds. It does require that we invest in ourselves. This project will continue to be vetted, tweaked, and monitored through the process to ensure the best results. Let's continue to be forward-thinking, take initiative, and make good things happen in Richmond. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chad Bolser.
Got all the heavy hitters.
Yeah, really.
Good late evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am Chad Bolser. I have been a resident here of Richmond for the past 24 years, and for the last 21 of those years on 113 South 21st Street. I'm the chancellor at Ivy Tech Community College, and one of the 19 campuses in the largest statewide community college in the country. And we like to remind our folks every day that we are the workforce producer for your area, not just here, but across the state of Indiana. For 10 years, I've worked for that organization, and 5 years ago, 5 years into that, I got the opportunity to go to Indy, and I stayed in Richmond and worked in Indy. I was one of those transplants, but I stayed here. 2 2 years ago, in a couple of weeks, I made the best decision I made in my career, which was to come back to the Richmond campus. And at that point, I inherited a leadership team in which 6 vacancies were there. And of the leadership team, 2, I became the 3rd that didn't just live, that lived in not just Richmond, but in our 5-county service area. Everybody else was outside. As a large producer of talent, attracting talent, retaining talent, developing talent, we must also attract talent, develop talent, and retain those folks. We now, on October 16th, will be 1 full year of full leadership team, 14 folks who live in this area. But our strategy is to recruit local from our own folks. We don't recruit outside nearly as much as we used to. You know why? Because they don't come. Now, is it the only reason housing? Certainly not. But it's a big one. And as you've heard others say before, it is an issue. And if we're to grow and attract, develop, and retain talent, which is our mission, we must provide the opportunities to continue to do that and not keep just recruiting from the folks that are in our own community. I appreciate the effort that you're going through tonight, and I appreciate all the folks that have spoken. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Walker.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Appreciate your time this evening and everyone's time tonight. I wanted to talk briefly about tourism because there is a point to this. Richmond, Wayne County's tourism industry is experiencing exponential growth. In 2022 alone, our economic impact through visitor spending showed visitors injected $160 million into area businesses. Why is that relevant tonight? The growth of a community, amenities, and its quality of life is directly tied to increased visitation and its economic impact dollars, but even more importantly, to our population growth. The more amenities we can offer to visitors and potential residents, the better our chances are to attract and keep them. Through increased tourism visitation, we are, in essence, introducing Richmond and Wayne County to potentially new residents each and every time someone visits and experiences our area, whether it's through visitation by individual and family travelers, group event participants, students, their parents, new faculty, friends. I am a firm believer you never know where your next piece of business is going to come from. Those who visit our area, for whatever reason, may be looking to relocate their business, or they themselves may be looking for a place to relocate. Again, you never know where your next piece of business is going to come from. Some of us may recall, and it's been repeated tonight, we did have a population, and I remember that population of 45,000 plus. We had no issues with traffic. We had none of that came to be. But we as a community tonight, we have ample room to regrow our population through the growth of additional housing opportunities and amenities. If we keep losing population, we will continue to lose services, and then where will our community be? Robin mentioned about the tax base. That's exactly correct. Projects such as Smith Hill Development Project have the tremendous innate ability to help grow our city's population by filling the gap of housing availability within Richmond. Is that the end-all be-all? No, but it's a start. That potential population growth is extremely critical to the future growth of Richmond's tourism industry, but again, even more importantly, our city's population growth, and is directly responsible for spurring the development of additional amenities that support increased visitation, enhance our city's attraction and retention efforts, grow our local business, and at the same time, offer our own residents more in the way of amenities. I have listened a lot to this evening and have as well been at other meetings regarding this project. And I truly believe this is not an either-or decision, but really one of a win-win decision for our community and all of our residents, and especially our locally owned businesses. Tonight, we ask you, the members of Richmond Common Council, to allow for the rezoning of this important project so that then the various concerns mentioned tonight in previous meetings can be adequately addressed through targeted studies.
Time.
I didn't hear the bell. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
You didn't see my signal?
Monica Kochline.
President, Councilwomen and men, and Mayor. I'm Monica Kochline, a Richmond resident residing at 2320 Reeveston Road. As a leader in the nonprofit sector, specifically the arts, our success directly depends on this community's success. Many of our nonprofit organizations are heavily dependent on local grants, businesses, and individual donations to support our impactful programming. Should the population of Richmond and Wayne County continue to decline, funding sources will not be diversified as they naturally would be with population growth. And as a result, the vital services provided to those in our community that make Richmond a place to grow and thrive may suffer. In addition, as a leader of a family foundation, our founders have chosen Richmond and Wayne County to be their geographical beneficiaries. Our founders were raised in Richmond and believe the success they achieved later in life was directly attributable to the opportunities provided by this city in their childhoods. We need these same opportunities and even more for the youth of our community. I encourage Richmond Council to work relentlessly to defy the projections and remain focused on population growth. And thank you so much for providing the space for all voices to be heard tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jason Troutwine.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Jason Troutwine. I live at 3315 Dorothy Lane, which is just a few blocks from this development. I'm a lifelong resident of Wayne County, and I'm in favor of this project because I have hope for our community. I appreciate this council's leadership in taking time to hear voices in favor and in opposition of this development. I would also like to thank the community leaders who selflessly chose to speak in favor of this project tonight. This group represents individuals who invest their time, talent, and treasure every day to help make our community a better place, and their voices are credible. I believe it's important to give value and weight to credible voices and arguments based on fact, data, experience, expert analysis. Unfortunately, many of the arguments against this project are based on opinion, speculation, and emotion. For example, tonight we've heard arguments that no one will live in this development, that no one can afford this development, that no one wants to live in Richmond. And we've also heard speakers say that we're going to have a traffic issue and that we're going to have a density issue. Those arguments cannot coexist. They contradict one another. In contrast, tonight we've heard from local professionals who have risked personal and professional relationships to speak in favor of this development. A group of leaders who have agreed to share their experience and their expertise so this council can make an informed decision on what's best for our community. Tonight we've heard from local real estate professionals who understand the market and how housing will create churn and provide opportunities at all price points. Housing experts and appraisers who have explained that the demand for housing in our community is real and that we simply aren't meeting it. Experts in land, water, and drainage who explain that this development will not create drainage problems, but could be part of the solution. Area employers who share firsthand knowledge related to difficulties in recruiting talented professionals to our community because of a lack of housing. We've also heard from community nonprofit representatives, economic professionals, and the list goes on. This group of leaders has explained how this property, positioned adjacent to residential housing and less than 1 mile from major retail, has the potential to relieve our housing shortages, grow enrollment in Richmond community schools, increase support for our nonprofits, strengthen our employment pipeline for local businesses, and increase property values, solve our water issues, strengthen our retail environment. Tonight, I'm asking this council, We are asking this council to vote in favor of this development, change our city's trajectory so that we can become the community that we complain we are not. Please vote in favor of this. I appreciate your leadership and your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes public commentary. However, the mayor would like to make a statement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, council members. Having spent the last 12 years where you're sitting, I appreciate all your work and due diligence on things like this and your patience tonight, listening to all the citizens. And I appreciate the citizens, I'm a lifelong Richmond Wayne County resident, so I appreciate their comments too. I know there are concerns by the public and by families who live in the area, and I want to assure them that the rezoning request being considered tonight is just the first of 3 steps in the city's required review process, and there's much more due diligence that will come later. If the zoning is approved tonight, the next step will be the detailed development plan. During this step, a detailed drainage plan and a traffic impact study will be required, among other additional details pertaining to the development. Plan commissioners and professional engineering staff will work with all city departments, including the fire department, the police department, the sanitary district, even the law department, as well as all relevant utility providers to assess the project's ability to sustain the utility load, stormwater runoff, vehicular traffic, and so on. Planning staff will make a recommendation, and the Plan Commission will hold another public hearing before voting on the detailed development plan. The third and final step is a final development plan review process that will be applicable to all departments and all agencies. So as you can see, there's much more planning and review that will occur prior to the redevelopment being approved. I want to assure the public that our professional planning department and engineers will work diligently to ensure that the development does not negatively impact the neighborhoods around it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we have officially closed the public hearing. I'm going to open the floor, so to speak, to council members for any comments that they might wish to make at this point.
Mr. President.
She actually asked me before the meeting. So.
First, I'd like to extend my gratitude to everyone that's present this evening, both those in support and in opposition. Of the request that's been put before us tonight, I understand there are strong emotions and valid points on both sides of this issue. I hear you, and I respect your perspectives. I will be voting in favor of the proposed zoning change. While I share many of your concerns, and they are valid, we need to proceed with this step to address those concerns through further testing and evaluations. This is just the first phase of many that will allow us to move forward to address those concerns and get us answers. As elected officials and citizens, we must hold those involved in these subsequent steps accountable and collaborate to address everyone's issues. Our goal is to make a decision that benefits the future of our city and its current residents.
Mr. President.
Mr. Goss had asked to speak earlier.
Yes. 86% of renters say they would like to buy a home, but can't afford one. Of those people, 54% think it is unlikely they'll ever be able to afford one, according to a national poll conducted by Social Science Research Solutions. 90% of renters younger than 45 say they'd like to buy but can't afford to. We have an affordable housing problem. This is a nationwide problem. A $600,000 home with a 3-car payment garage is not affordable for most people. We also have a good paying job problem. We have made progress on better paying jobs locally, but employers are telling us that we need more housing options. I was born and raised here in Richmond. For as long as I can remember, we have talked about brain drain in this community. Our kids are moving away. I'm sure many of you here tonight have raised kids here, and I'm sure at least some of those kids have moved away. I understand that there are a lot of factors as to why those that moved away chose to do so. But if you ask the younger people why they moved away, you'll probably hear things like better job opportunities, more things to do. These are quality of life things. I've seen a lot of changes in our city. I'm sure many of you have as well. Every time change happens, there is opposition. Most of the time, once the change occurs, it is for the better. Change based upon needs. Change is hard. For most of my career, I've worked in the information technology and cybersecurity field. I deal with change constantly. If you are not changing, you are falling behind. Richmond has fallen behind. I remember them extending and widening South L Street. I remember them adding 37th Street. They did this due to the future development of the southeast side of town. Hunters Point, Sandbridge, Meadow Park, and this very lot that we're discussing tonight. I understand the concerns that have been brought up. Many of these concerns are more likely to be addressed if this development occurs. Concerns about the use of TIF increment financing or TIF dollars to build infrastructure. We have done this before for other types of projects such as industrial parks. Some of the infrastructure was even put in before we even had potential industry. We use tax dollars for economic development activities. This is no different. We need this development to attract workers to live here for higher paying jobs. Some of that infrastructure the city will end up being responsible for anyway. Speaking of infrastructure, let's talk about density. I heard last week that a mile of sewer line cost $1 million. I think that's probably on the cheap side. But let's say we have a mile of sewer line in this development. If we only had 50 houses in this development, then the taxes for those houses would have to be much higher to install and maintain that mile of sewer line than it would be if there was 150 houses. So the question becomes, how high do you want your taxes to be? I have tried to think of another lot within the city limits that would be large enough for this type of development. I cannot think of any. If this development moves outside the city limits, the cost of infrastructure would become more expensive. It would contribute to urban sprawl. The city would lose tax dollars. Richmond schools would not get more students, therefore less dollars, because the dollars follow the students. Without those dollars supporting our infrastructure, without those tax dollars supporting our infrastructure in our core of this city becomes more difficult. As a district representative, this will not affect my district directly, but it will help the city as a whole, and the people in my district will benefit from the higher paying jobs and larger tax base. Sometimes we must do what's best for the city as a whole. I do thank you all for your input. I will be voting in favor of this ordinance.
Mr. Purcell.
This is a very important issue for me. And as before, I came here tonight to listen, and I brought 2 prepared statements, a pro and con. The following is my decision and thoughts for this zoning request following tonight's presentations. My hope is to maintain the trust and open communication with our citizens and thank all of you who have reached out to share their thoughts. This is our second and most likely last chance in the near future to develop this area. There are many things to consider when looking forward as a stagnant or shrinking community. Do we work toward proper managed growth in an organized and planned manner, or do we continue to take a shotgun approach and hope for the best as we continue to lose the ability to afford essential services, thus resulting in continued stagnation or decline? Losing the tax base for essential services is something that I understand from my experiences. Without considering a clear destination, it is hard for us, the legislative body, to measure such requests as to how it helps us arrive at that destination. I have stated this on many occasions, and it has seemingly fallen on deaf ears. I hope to change this in the near future. That being stated, the reality is that our community is stagnant or shrinking, as is the tax base. It is becoming increasingly difficult to fund essential services and to prioritize the same. Our infrastructure is crumbling in the core of our community, and we are losing our rich historic character, and that loss increases exponentially with every passing year of a shotgun approach to changing this failing course. It will take hard work, planning, and enthusiastic leadership to bring about the cultural mindset change necessary to begin to plan the work, to work outside the recent accepted norm that has brought us to where we are today. We're not alone in this 50-year-plus downward slide of Rust Belt communities, but that is no excuse. We still have assets left by our rich industrial history and founding fathers. It is time to move forward and look to brighter days ahead for our community based on this foundation. I am willing to take a chance on our citizens and their wish for something better for themselves and our community. Let's hope and pray that this begins a ripple change that turns into the needed wave of change for the future of our community. I will be supporting Ordinance 40, 2024 for a change of zoning as per our responsibility and appropriate consideration of our comprehensive plan and other relevant issues for this project. I will keep a keen eye on making sure as we move forward to work on and find the answers to the legitimate questions asked of us tonight by the citizens of our community before supporting the continuation of this process. Thank you.
Mr. Parker.
Mr. Turner.
He asked
Go
to
ahead.
speak next. Parker.
Go ahead, Larry.
By finger motion.
The density of this project is too great for 80 acres. 288 total housing units, streets, 9 unfenced ponds, plans for 750-plus people, 400 or 500 cars, 1 entrance on Garwood, which is already handling too much traffic, and it's scheduled to have more traffic south of it as soon as we open up the southern part of it for senior housing. And the one thing I guess that really bothers me the most is the fact that we're elected to represent the people and their wishes. And I can't look at those 94 people that sent in letters of opposition and say, well, you're dumb. Your wishes don't count. Your opposition went unheard. We need housing, but we don't need it here. And I will be voting no on this issue.
Thank you. Dr. Wright?
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone that's here tonight, both pro and con. And I need some clarification from Mr. Stumpf. Did I understand you to say that if it's voted in, that you can make changes and/or exceptions to what has been what has been approved?
No, what the plan development does, it's what the zoning aspect that we're voting on tonight, it's about the appropriateness of the use of the site with those standards that are in the PUD. Everything else follows the city's ordinance, so it'll be what you see up there.
And another question. This one picture that you have here, that's supposed to be a townhouse. It is District C, the character images townhouses.
Yes.
If I'm looking at this actually looks like an apartment building. It actually looks like Winding Ridge Apartments, actually. Just needing clarification. I've lived elsewhere. I've lived in large cities. I lived in the District of Columbia for 12 years. And progress, yes, Richmond does need progress. I came home intentionally. I came back home. I was one of those ones that said I would never come back, but I came back. I've been here since 1985, have not left. I don't have any fancy words or glorious words, but some of the things that I've heard tonight about basically other people's opinions and their views of things don't matter, and, you know, friendships lost. That's unfortunate because it's not personal, it's business. And it's what's best for Richmond. That slogan, "We are Richmond." Well, you know, in the famous words of Rodney King, can we all just get along? Can't we sit down and figure out and include everyone? This is coming from the heart. I don't have no prepared speech. I had a lot of questions, but some of them had already been answered, so I'm not going to repeat myself. So we need to somehow figure this out. Yes, I do have a problem with tip dollars being used. I do. I don't care what nobody says. That's my opinion. That's all that matters to me at this particular point in time. But we have we do have a housing shortage. We have underhousing, 7,000 underhoused and 5,500, I believe it is, are senior citizens. Infrastructure, it needs to be fixed. Why don't we do things in order? That's what I can't figure out about us. We need to be a good steward.
Lucinda, can we bring this
So,
to a close?
yeah, well, I'm just saying that however I vote, I'm voting the way God has directed me to vote because, again, I prayed before. I've been praying about this the whole time, and I'm still sitting here praying.
Well, thank you for that.
So,
Can I speak if it's short?
Short, please.
I just want to thank everybody coming here tonight. I know there's so many people that have done, everybody has worked hard on this, whether you're in favor of it or in opposition of it. And I want everybody to know I really appreciate you. It's very difficult up here when you're making these kinds of decisions. One of the things in making my decision, a little part of it is that I'm the mother of 10 children. The age range is from 26 up to 40. I'm 57 in case you want to know. And I go to my children and I ask them, because they're of those age groups, of what they want in a home. Other than one that lives on a lot of acres, I have a son who's lived in a townhome and he loved it. He liked the fact that he didn't have to take care of the yard. The culture has changed so much. Not everybody wants a big yard. I have 3 acres and I love where I live. Not everybody likes that. I have a son that I asked, he said that he would like to have a home, but he doesn't want a big home. He wants a short.
Come on, wrap it up. Come on.
Okay, so I am voting in favor of this for the future generations that are to come. And I want you to all know that I appreciate everybody and I still want to be your friend. Thank you.
All right, one more.
Can I? Okay. I've already been in trouble once, so, I have the microphone and, yeah. First and foremost, Kenny Powell made it through 49 years in just 3 minutes. That is a big deal, ladies and gentlemen.
It is.
I want to say thank you too. And this has been a real vetting process from both sides. I've got friends and colleagues on both sides. Born and raised in Richmond, raising a family here in Richmond. it's important. But what's important to me is what we talked about tonight in the public-private partnership. And I think from the from the residents that are adjacent to this development in Sandbridge, they just want to be heard.
Yeah.
And the people that are adjacent to that, they just want to be heard. There are water issues. There are issues in the ditch, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't come to a new development to address these things. Now, I appreciate, Brian, being able to sharpen your pencil and listen to the needs of the community. But this truly needs to be a public-private partnership.
Yeah.
No backdoor deals, no meeting in secret, right?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, I still have the microphone. Mr. Rome, Dennis Rome, why can't we have both?
Yeah.
My friend Corey George, yes, with stipulations. And I think we can have both. And I think that it's gonna take us coming together and working together. You've been heard, and I think that for Richmond, we can do this and have both. Thank you.
All right, Bill.
Amen. Amen.
Mr. President, I don't have a speech. Will be voting in favor. I think we need the housing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And I'll keep my opinion to myself.
Move for engrossment.
Second.
Wait a minute. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Please call the roll.
Call the question.
There you go.
Second.
Okay. Doug Goss,
Aye.
Lucinda Wright,
Nay.
Bill Engel,
Aye.
Larry Parker,
No.
Ann Taylor,
Yes.
Jane Bumbelow,
Aye.
Justin Burkhart,
Aye.
Jerry Purcell,
Aye.
and Gary Turner.
Aye.
7-2 in favor.
Thank you. We have quite a bit more business to do, but I'm gonna break for 5 minutes, so all of you folks who want to go home and go to bed can leave.
Turn it over.
I already did.
Thank you.
I think so.
Told you.
I mean, he promised no more responsibility.
Yes.
Okay, let's hurry.
Okay, everybody.
We're going to restart the meeting immediately, so I'd appreciate
Restart the whole
quiet in the
thing?
room.
Sorry.
Where, Tony, I need an agenda.
I didn't get one either.
What are we getting?
The agenda?
He's not up yet. We still got to finish
Remember, I
our meeting.
emailed
Still on
you.
council?
I emailed you about this. one.
Oh, okay.
About, this is 39/2024.
Then I don't care.
Right, so, Madam Clerk, please read by title only, ordinance
I'm gonna
39,
vote say we can-
2024, which is on second reading.
Ordinance 39, 2024, an appropriation ordinance amending the 2024 budget.
Oh, here we go.
Thank you.
Is that what you wanted?
That's exactly what I wanted. Now I want somebody to give us a brief introduction to that.
Report,
Part. Yes,
Finance Committee report.
yes. Finance wants to report before we hear from,
Oh,
If Denise could get us.
Whatever the pleasure of council is. Denise Retz, Park Superintendent. I'm happy to be here today. I will make this brief, and I'm happy to. So in Finance Committee today, we went line by line on this Park Emergency Fund. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Basically, this is a park emergency fund that totals just a little over $100,000, and these are all items that require attention here in our park department, mainly listing in priority. And these are things that basically we either need repaired before next budget session and before 2025 comes rolling around, and things that are definitely priority sooner than later. So some of those things that you see on this list are either state mandate or for security needs and things of that nature. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I know you've had a long night, so I won't bore you with all the details. They're right in front of you.
Mr. Parker has a question.
One question. Why do we need a backflow preventer for the administrative office?
So if you'll see the new thing here, actually, we actually changed that to a different area. We removed that from this particular page here that I just handed out. So there is a backflow preventer in the administrator office, but we ended up changing that to more of a, it's a different thing that Reynolds ended up putting in for a better.
We have to pay for an inspection for that every year.
Yes.
So if we don't need it, why do we have it?
We actually do need it because
Why?
of the water coming in from the public areas. It's just something that we have to have. So we have a backflow preventer in every area. So we have one at the pool, we have one at the administration office, we have one at the greenhouse, we have one at Clear Creek. I can
understand.
name all of the areas.
I understand this, but I don't understand the administration building, but if they made you, they made you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Hearing none, Finance wants to make a report, I think, and I think they want to.
We do. So thank you, Denise, for meeting with us and explaining this to us. Back on June 26th, we received a memo outlining this with line item. And what we did after we heard from her this evening, she prioritized this list for the Parks Emergency Fund. So I do appreciate that. And that came to the sum of $106,000, $289.77. There were two items on here, downtown parking and community branding. That was not a part of the presentation. There was a 2024 downtown parking study that the mayor talked about but did not have present at the meeting. And so it is Finance Committee's hope that we can amend this for that sum of $106,289.77 so that the Parks Department can go ahead and get these things in motion. And then those two last items, we will revisit once more information is present.
I think we have a motion along those lines.
Is motion to amend and remove parking and rebranding from ordinance 39, 2024.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, uh-oh, here goes my voice, to remove parking and rebranding from the program. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. So, this ordinance is now on public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for it may come forward. In 3 minutes, buddy.
After that, don't worry, it won't be that long. I'm definitely in favor of any money that we can give to the Parks Department. If I had two concerns, one was I didn't think the full 300,000 was going to, but you've covered that topic, which I think is good. And the other thing is, it's not enough. If you go to that park, 100,000 in Glen Miller, you could spend 100,000 in Glen Miller alone. I don't know how we get the money or what organizations we can develop to get better usage of that park and make it look better. I'm all for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, anyone wishing to speak against this ordinance, please come forward.
Move for endorsement.
I think we had.
We had another
We had-
pro.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I want to speak for it.
Everybody gets 3 minutes here.
Hopefully it won't take 3 minutes. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Kathy Hillard, and I reside at 33 North 8th Street here in Richmond. I own multiple businesses downtown and on Main Street. I am also the president of Main Street Richmond Board. I come before you this evening to ask you to vote yes to Ordinance 39. I stress the vital importance of sufficient parking for the prosperity of our commercial districts. Adequate parking significantly influences customer convenience and accessibility, which is crucial for attracting and retaining patrons. If customers struggle to find parking, they often take their business elsewhere, leading to reduced foot traffic and sales for all businesses in our area. Additionally, ample parking is essential to support the expansion and evolution of our downtown and Main Street. As these areas grow and new businesses emerge, the demand for parking will only increase. By proactively addressing parking needs now, we can ensure that our commercial districts evolve into vibrant and appealing destinations for both locals and visitors. I urge you to prioritize parking solutions in your planning and decision-making process. A vote for Ordinance 39 is a vote for the success of small business downtown. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we just amended the ordinance to remove parking. Anyone wishing to speak against this ordinance, please come forward. Close the hearing.
Move for endorsement.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Call the question.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Doug Goss,
Aye.
Lucinda Wright,
Aye.
Bill Engel,
Aye.
Larry Parker.
Aye.
Ann Taylor. Jane Bumbleow.
Aye.
Justin Burkhart.
Aye.
Jerry Purcell.
Aye.
And Gary Turner.
Aye.
All are in favor.
May I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Still have P&L.
I have no idea.
Oh, I know. And I'm running it.
You are watching Whitewater Government Television, WGTV, Channel 11, part of the Whitewater Community Television family of stations.
Good evening, and welcome to the Richmond Power and Light meeting, and it's very late. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Doug Goss.
Here.
Lucinda Wright.
Present.
Bill Engel.
Here.
Larry Parker.
Here.
Ann Taylor.
Here.
Gary Turner.
Here.
Jane Bumbelow.
Here.
Justin Burkhart.
Here.
And Jerry Purcell.
Here.
All are present.
Thank you. Next, we have approval of the minutes.
If there are no corrections, I move that we approve minutes as read.
Second.
We have a,
Bill.
yeah, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, bills to be approved.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Finance Committee has reviewed the bills and moved for approval of $8,037,264.84.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the bills for $8,037,264.84. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have the report from the general manager.
General.
The general, from the general.
We have two items on the agenda, the first of which is opening bids on a new self-loading reel trailer for the line department as previously approved in the budget. I do have the publisher's affidavit, if you would like to approve that, enter that into the meeting minutes.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir.
move to accept proof of publication and place on file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Looks like we have two bids. First bidder is from SAUBER Manufacturing Company. Their bid is $22,947. 4 to 5 months delivery. Second bid. Alltech. I think this is a title for a truck, and maybe this wasn't a bid after all, because it is a title for a truck.
Are they giving us one?
Yeah, it's probably the bucket truck that we just took delivery of recently, because the price is and there's an invoice here for $144,000. So anyway, I don't think it's for a real trailer.
That's an expensive realtor.
Yes, it is.
The amount on the first one, Karen, was $22,947.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Is that all the bids before I didn't, okay.
Want to refer them?
Motion to refer bids for, to the general manager for tabulation, evaluation, and recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to refer the bids. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. And the final item on the agenda this evening is a request to receive bids on one new compact 2024 pickup truck for the engineering department as previously approved in the budget. We'd also like permission to have in the bid specs an alternate of a 2024 1/2-ton pickup truck, just because the small trucks sometimes are more expensive than the compact right now, and a full size might be more readily available, so we would like the option to have that as an alternate.
Motion to authorize general manager to receive bids.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to authorize the general manager to receive bids. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I did have an updated presentation for you this evening on our solar in Richmond, but we will save that for next month since it's almost 11 p.m.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Move for adjournment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Motion,
Get me that.
we're adjourned.
4 minutes, Gary.
You are watching Whitewater Government Television, WGTV, Channel 11, part of the Whitewater Community Television family.